Chapter 1923. Under the dim candlelight, Chu Luiyue saw the bloodstains on his face and his horrified eyes. Nan Hongyang's eyes widened almost subconsciously, and he curled up backward. Unfortunately, his arms and legs had been broken, and he couldn't move at all. He could only wriggle weakly. It looked like he was in a sorry state. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes slightly. Before coming, she had thought that Yin Qing must have used a lot of means to pry open Nan Hongyang's mouth. But when she saw it, she was still a little surprised. She didn't think the scene was bloody and cruel, but she was surprised that Yin Qing could really leave so many wounds on Nan Hongyang's body. The physical strength of a venerable god expert was very strong. Even if Nan Hongyang couldn't use the force in his body now, he should be very resistant. To be able to beat him up like this, Yin Qing's means could be seen. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. She was indeed Rong Xiu's confidant. To be able to reach her current position, Yin Qing naturally had her own strengths, and she was definitely not as simple as she looked. Don't be nervous, we're not here for you this time. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly, her voice gentle. But at this time, in Nan Hongyang's eyes, she was no different from a demon. It's you? Only then did Nan Hongyang see clearly that it wasn't Yin Qing who came, but Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue. But this didn't make him relax. Instead, it made him more scared. He remembered clearly that the culprit who drugged him and made him unable to use the force in his body was this woman in front of him. He was extremely angry, but now he was meat on the chopping block, so he didn't dare to be too presumptuous. He knew that once he provoked these two, his end would be 100 times more miserable than now. I've said all I can say. What else do you want to do? Nan Hongyang's body tightened. His voice was hoarse as if it contained endless anger and resentment. Perhaps he was worried that others would hear him, but he lowered his voice when he spoke. Chu Luiyue sneered. Don't worry, we don't want to do anything. We're just here to thank you. Her eyes were curved, her eyes were bright, and the corners of her lips were raised. Her attitude was sincere. She was really here to thank him. With Nan Hongyang's testimony, they would be in an invincible position if they fell out with the Nan family in the future. Chu Luiyue thought highly of such a meritorious person. Her words were like a stab to Nan Hongyang's heart. His face instantly turned pale. Since I've already said it, you can at least give me a quick death. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. TSK. She didn't know what Yin Qing had done to push Nan Hongyang to this point. Only when one's life was worse than death would one beg for death in every way possible. Unfortunately, Chu Luiyue didn't plan to do that. She shook her head regretfully. You haven't said those words in front of the head of the Nan family. How can you die? Don't worry, we'll send people to take good care of you in the coming days. Nan Hongyang trembled violently. His eyes were filled with endless fear. If that was really the case, then No. You. Chu Luiyue didn't give him a chance to argue. She waved her hand gently and turned to leave. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu ignored Nan Hongyang screaming behind them, and his voice soon disappeared. Chu Luiyue didn't look back. She walked all the way. She skipped past the other two gods and went directly to the innermost cell. Luo Yin was inside, sitting with his back to the door. His situation was a little different from Nan Hongyang's. There weren't too many messy blood stains in his cell, and he didn't seem to have been tortured too much. He was sitting there perfectly fine. Chu Luiyue understood that it was useless to use all sorts of torture methods on such a person. She had to use other methods. Luo Yin. Chu Luiyue called out. Luo Yin didn't move at all. He turned a deaf ear to her. Chu Luiyue didn't mind. She continued. You should have known that Nanny's death had nothing to do with us that day, right? Luo Yin still didn't respond. Chu Luiyue laughed. Actually, since you've killed Nan Yuxing with your own hands, from a certain point of view, you've avenged the woman you like, haven't you? Her words were simple, but it made Luo Yin turn around abruptly. His expression was very complicated. Shock, anger, shame, resentment. However, these emotions only flashed through his eyes for a moment. After a while he said coldly, I don't know what you're talking about. Because he hadn't spoken for a few days, his voice was hoarse. Chu Luiyue looked at him. Her eyes were clear and sharp, like a sharp blade that tore through his last layer of disguise. You should know very well how Nan Yuxing recovered his Yuan meridian in such a short period of time, and even broke through to the supreme god level, right? Even I can sense that he has Nan Yi's aura on him. Luo Yan, how could you not sense it? Luo Yan didn't say anything, but his hands gradually clenched. Every word Chu Luyue said was like a steel nail that pierced his heart accurately. Blood dripped. During this period of time, we didn't even see the Nan family, let alone do anything to them. How did Nanny die? How did her outstanding Yuan meridian transfer to her biological brother's body? Luo Yan, I don't think you need me to tell you the truth, right? Chu Luyue bent down slightly, leaned forward and asked softly. So this is how you like Nanny? Luo Yan gritted his teeth and trembled slightly. There seemed to be a string in his mind that was stretched taut. Rong Xiao suddenly said, Luo Yan, if Nan Yi's biological mother knows that you have such feelings for Nan Yi, and let her die without knowing why, how do you think she will look at you when she meets you in the afterlife? Don't forget that you are her biological brother. This sentence finally made Luo Yan's expression change abruptly. He suddenly stood up, looked at Rong Xiao in shock and clenched his teeth. What else do you know? Digression. Today, I saw a sentence. In the mountains and rivers of a foreign land, the wind and the moon are the same. Everyone must work hard together. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from AI. Com. Chapter 1924. Hearing Rong Xiao's words, Chu Luyue also turned around in shock and glanced at him. What did he mean? Luo Yan was Nan Yi's biological mother's brother? Nan Yi and Nan Yuxing's mother was called Yi Dai, and she was also the matriarch of the Nan family. It was said that she passed away not long after giving birth to Nan Yi, so Nan Yifan doted on this daughter very much. As for Luo Yan, it had always been rumored that he was a distant relative of Yi Dai, because he had no family and no one to rely on, and because of his outstanding talent, he was brought to the Nan family and became half a member of the Nan family. All these years, Luo Yan had indeed lived up to everyone's expectations. He had cultivated smoothly and broken through to become a god-level expert. Coupled with his relationship with Yi Dai, his status in the Nan family was even more honorable. This was also why he took special care of Nan Yuxing and Nan Yi. But Chu Luyue never expected that Luo Yan was actually Yi Dai's biological brother. And judging from Luo Yan's reaction, it was clearly true. Chu Luyue couldn't help but gasp when she understood the hurdle. If that was the case, then Luo Yan liked Nan Yi. No wonder he refused to admit it previously. If this matter was known by the world, then his and Nan Yi's reputation would be completely ruined. Even though Nan Yi was already dead, Luo Yan was still alive. Once such a stain was stained, it would be extremely difficult to wash it off. Chu Luyue was still in shock. While Luo Yan was about to break down in the cell, Rong Xiao's words directly snapped the last string in his mind. Immense shock and panic surged in his heart. He was indeed Yi Dai's biological brother. To be precise, he was her biological half-brother. He was the illegitimate son of Yi Dai's father. For so many years, his identity had been concealed very well. Other than his father and Yi Dai, no one else knew, especially since the two of them had already been gone for more than 10 years. This secret had almost been completely sealed in the dust of time, never to see the light of day again. Yi Dai was very good to him, but unfortunately, she passed away early. Later on, he wanted to take good care of the two children, especially Nan Yi. She looked very similar to Yi Dai, so he naturally doted on her even more. But even he didn't expect that over time, this feeling would quietly change. He didn't dare to face it, and had always buried it deeply. He had never thought about it too much. He couldn't figure out how Rong Xiao found out. All of Luo Yan's calmness and composure had completely vanished at this moment. He looked at Rong Xiao with a crazed expression, as if he wanted to cut him into pieces. Unfortunately, this kind of attack had no effect on Rong Xiao. His expression was as usual. His handsome and enchanting face was half lit and half dark under the dim light of the lantern. In Luo Yan's eyes, he was like a killing god from hell. If Nan Yifan knows about this, he shouldn't be able to tolerate you, right? As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows and laughed. Oh, not necessarily. After all, Nan Yi died in his hands. No matter what, He is the one who let Nan down the most. What right does he have to criticize you? There was dead silence in the dark and cramped cell. Chu Luiyue could only hear rapid breathing. Luo Yin supported himself against the wall with one hand and covered his chest with the other. He bent down slightly and panted heavily. All kinds of unpleasant and suffocating smells poured into his nose, but he didn't feel anything. Rong Xiu's words were like a sharp sword, tearing apart the last layer of disguise he used to numb himself. Nan Yifan, it was really him. Yes, if it wasn't him, who else could it be? He was the biological father of these two people. When Nan Yixing recovered, he had always been by his side. If he hadn't done it, he would have sensed that something was wrong long ago. But he didn't do anything. He pretended to be peaceful and crossed the sea. Immense pain surged and completely drowned Luo Yin like a wave. Chu Luiyue also frowned. She had previously guessed that it might be Nan Yifan who did it. But she wasn't sure. After all, that was his biological daughter, the pearl in his palm that he had doted on since she was young. She still clearly remembered the anger and heartache on Nan Yifan's face when he saw that Nan Yi was injured. That wasn't an act. It was also because of this that it was even more unbelievable that he did this. How could he be so ruthless? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Since Rong Xiu said so, it should be confirmed. In fact, it was very likely that he already knew who did it. Depriving a person of their yuan meridian and transferring it to another person's body was a very complicated and energy-consuming thing. Nan Yifan wasn't a celestial physician, so he definitely didn't do it himself. In fact, there weren't many people in the entire Divine Ruins who had this ability. After a long while, Luo Yin finally straightened up. Chu Luiyue noticed that his hand, which was supporting himself against the wall, was already badly mangled because of the force he exerted. What do you want to ask and what do you want me to do? Luo Yin asked slowly. His face was ashen, as if all his energy had been sucked away in an instant. He was dispirited like a walking corpse. At this point, he knew that there was nothing he could do. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue looked at each other. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly, then took a step forward and asked, "Did Nan Yifan instruct you to assassinate us this time?" Luo Yin nodded. He hadn't said anything before, because he still had a last glimmer of hope in his heart. But Rong Xiu's words completely shattered everything. The Nan family? Nan Yifan? They were all the culprits who harmed Nan Yi. Furthermore, the thoughts that he had hidden so tightly had already been discovered by others. What was the point of continuing to hide? He didn't want to live anymore. And those people should all be buried with him. A trace of madness gradually surged from Luo Yan's eyes. Nan Yifan shouldn't have the ability to do so himself. Do you know who he asked to do it? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Luo Yan closed his eyes. I don't know. Back then, he had accompanied Nan Yi to the Yuntian Tower. After being rejected at the door, he had finally persuaded Nan Yi to go back. But the two of them were attacked on a mountain not far from the Yuntian Tower. He had also fallen into a coma at that time. And when he woke up again, he was in the Nan family. It was also at that time that he heard that Nan Yi was dead. He didn't know what had happened in between. Chu Luiyue didn't ask further. It seemed that Luo Yin really didn't know. But since he was willing to admit that Nan Yifan had instructed them to do it this time, it was enough. It was obvious that Nan Yifan wouldn't tell anyone about such a confidential matter. Chu Luiyue stretched out his hand. That thing is useless in your hands now. Why don't you give it to me? Luo Yin was stunned at first, but then he understood what Chu Luiyue meant. She wanted the flowing cloud flying diagram. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1926. When the flowing cloud flying diagram was unfolded, it was about 30 feet long. It was blank and shrouded in a layer of faint red glow. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. There's a restriction on it. Rong Xiu laughed. After all, it's one of the 10 great divine artifacts. The Nan family values it very much. It's normal that there's a restriction on it. Chu Luiyue nodded and carefully looked at the scroll in front of her. Apart from the layer of restriction on the flowing cloud flying diagram, she could not feel any energy fluctuations from it. Even if it was released, it would be difficult for anyone to guess that it was a divine artifact. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and sat up. Rong Xiu was a little reluctant, but he still let go of her and helped her put on her coat. His slightly calloused fingers brushed past her delicate and smooth shoulder, leaving only a fragrant scent. Chu Luiyue put on her clothes and got off the bed. At the same time, she waved her hand, and the transparent heavenly square cauldron appeared in the room. She grabbed the flowing cloud flying diagram and threw it in. Chi! The transparent karmic fire suddenly burned. It instantly swallowed the red scroll. Rong Xiu's posture was lazy. He leaned against the bed head, and one of his long legs bent. The quilt slid down, revealing a large area of his marble-like chest. He tilted his head slightly and looked at it with interest. Chu Luiyue stood beside the heavenly square cauldron and stared at it. Her bright and resplendent eyes reflected the light of the flames, as dazzling as the galaxy. After a moment, a slight cracking sound was heard. Crack. Immediately after, the layer of light that enveloped the red scroll shattered like ice. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. The flowing cloud flying diagram flew out again and landed in her hand. Whoosh! She unfolded it again. This time, without the obstruction of that layer of restriction, she was finally able to see the true appearance of this thing clearly. She could not help but be shocked and widen her eyes slightly. With a white silk cloth as the base, countless strong and bright colors were spread out and intertwined with each other. It was like a painting, but it wasn't. It was as if someone had accidentally broken the paint board and spread all the colors together. At first glance, it was messy, but there was an indescribable beauty to it. Chu Luiyue was a little stunned. Flowing cloud flying diagram. So that's how it is. She subconsciously reached out her hand. When her fingertips touched it, she realized that the pattern on it was uneven. No, this is a Xian formation? Chu Luiyue moved closer and took a closer look. Only then did he see that the seemingly chaotic colors on the surface were actually all small profound formations. The entire scroll was divided into countless tiny areas the size of a fingernail by transparent threads. Different Xian formations were drawn on each of these areas. The patterns were so fine and exquisite that it was almost impossible to distinguish them clearly. Even with Chu Luiyue's eyesight, he still couldn't see it clearly. After staring at the dazzling profound formation for a while, she suddenly had a thought. She extended a finger and pointed it at a small area within the formation. A trace of origin power was injected into it. Immediately after, a ray of light flew out from her fingertip. A huge profound formation quickly spread out in front of her. A strong pressure spread out from the profound formation. Chu Luiyue's breathing stopped, and she immediately raised her head to look at the profound formation. An indistinct roar came from it and lingered in his ears. She sucked in a breath of cold air in disbelief. Four symbols formation? This was a profound formation that could only be constructed by a great Xian King master. She had seen the four symbols formation's profound formation diagram in Lingxiao College before, but her realm wasn't enough at that time, so she only took a few glances and put it aside. But at that time, she remembered a part of the profound formation. So when she saw the profound formation in front of her, she recognized it at a glance. And this was just an inconspicuous little pattern on the flowing cloud flying diagram. Chu Luiyue looked at the flowing cloud flying diagram again. A bold conjecture suddenly appeared in her mind, causing her heart to beat faster. She held her breath and lightly pointed at another area. Chi! A slight sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Another ray of light spread out. It was also an extremely complicated profound formation. Revolving sky formation. Chu Luiyue muttered in shock. This profound formation's level was the same as the four symbols formation. She paused for a moment, pursed her lips, and pointed at the third location. A brighter profound formation that was bigger than the previous two appeared in front of her, and the pressure on it was obviously stronger than the four symbols formation and the revolving sky formation. This is... Chu Luiyue was dazzled for a moment. Lightning pattern formation. A low and pleasant voice came from behind her. Chu Luiyue turned around and glanced at Rong Xiu. This is a great grandmaster level profound formation? Rong Xiu smiled faintly and nodded. That's right. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything for a while. Great grandmaster, for so many years, She had only seen one great grandmaster level expert, and that was her master, Nan Suhui. It was also because of this identity that Nan Suhui's position in the Divine Ruins world was extremely high. Xian masters were not common, and those of this level were even rarer. It was unknown how much strength and mental energy was needed to display a great grandmaster level profound formation. But just now, she had only used her finger to lightly point and injected her force, and Chu Luyue could hear the sound of her heart beating violently. She once again looked at the gorgeous and intense colors. There were at least thousands of profound formations on it, and any one of them was a profound formation at the level of a great Xian King master. Needless to say, there were even higher level profound formations. Flowing cloud flying diagram. So this is the real flowing cloud flying diagram. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1927. Chu Luyue couldn't hide her shock. She had heard of the flowing cloud flying diagram before. Among the famous 10 great sacred artifacts, the flowing cloud flying diagram was actually a very inconspicuous one. Because it had almost no combat power, it was almost equivalent to a mobile teleportation array. Other than being able to send someone away at a critical moment and save a life, most of the time, it had no use. Moreover, he might not be able to accomplish this every single time. Didn't Luo Yan and the others fail before? Because the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier collapsed, the flowing cloud flying diagram was disturbed by Chu Luyue's side, and in the end, they were intercepted again. From the looks of it, the flowing cloud flying diagram's name, as one of the 10 great sacred artifacts, was really a little exaggerated. The reason why Chu Luyue took it from Luo Yan was because she had the principle of not letting any treasure go. She was also a little curious. If she had any expectations for this thing, she really didn't. Chu Luyue already had the heavenly square sacred cauldron, and this was the most famous of the 10 great sacred artifacts. So when she looked at the others, they were actually just SOSO. But she never thought that. So there was actually such a secret hidden in the flowing cloud flying diagram. So many high-grade Xian formations arranged densely together. What did it mean? One had to know that to activate these Xian formations, one only needed to inject a strand of origin power. A great Xian King master working himself to death and painstakingly drawing a Xian formation might not even be as light as this flowing cloud flying diagram. This was simply a fundamental suppression. This was a true treasure. Even Chu Luyue, who had seen countless treasures, was a little stunned at this moment. This flowing cloud flying diagram greatly exceeded her imagination. It was rare for Rong Xiu to see such a reaction from her. He admired it for a while, and his heart was filled with love. He endured it again and again, and only then did he restrain himself from going over to pull her back. There's naturally a reason why the flowing cloud flying diagram can be listed as one of the 10 great sacred artifacts. A smile appeared on his lips, and it seemed to spread between his brows again, rubbing out some ambiguous spring. Chu Luyue turned back to look at him. You knew? Rong Xiu laughed and shook his head. This is also my first time seeing the flowing cloud flying diagram. However, I did know that Nan Yifan valued this thing very much. Now I finally understand the reason. Chu Luyue's hand gently brushed across the flowing clouds flying diagram. The 3 Xian formations quickly flew back. It didn't look any different from before. The waves in Chu Luyue's heart could not calm down for a long time. She was a mystic cultivator. She knew all too well what kind of astonishing battle prowess such a treasure possessed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he could fight against 10,000 alone. That's right. The Nan family is so arrogant. How could something that could catch their eye be an ordinary object? That's right. Only when so many Xian formations exist at the same time would they be able to possess such a powerful strength that could shatter space at any time. Chu Luyue gently exhaled. But if the flowing cloud flying diagram is so powerful, why didn't Luo Yan and the others use it before? Rong Xiu paused slightly. The flowing clouds flying diagram belongs to the Nan family. If I'm not wrong, Nan Yifan should have given it to Nan Yuxing in the beginning, to let him use it in case of an emergency. However, later on, Perhaps Luo Yin said something or did something. But the flowing cloud flying diagram ended up in his hands. It's a pity that he didn't know the true use of this flowing clouds flying diagram. So he wasted a chance to escape. If he could use these Xian formations at that time, even if the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier collapsed, they wouldn't be stopped by Chu Liyue's power, and could leave smoothly. Chu Liyue nodded in agreement. When she got this thing, the restriction on it indeed didn't have Luo Yan's aura. This time, the Nan family has suffered such heavy losses. Nan Yifan shouldn't have no reaction. Chu Liyue stared at the flowing clouds flying diagram for a while, and finally put it away. I just don't know what they plan to do this time. Nan Yifan must have received the news long ago, and knew what had happened here. But until now they hadn't done anything. This was really abnormal. Rong Xiu smiled. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. His tone was somewhat casual, and his eyebrows were relaxed, as if he didn't think this would pose any threat. Chu Liyue blinked. She was a little curious. What exactly did Rong Xiu have on Nan Yifan? By the way, why hasn't there been any news from the Black Demon Cave? Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something and asked curiously. That day, she had clearly seen the totem of the Black Demon Cave appear between Mo Yun's eyebrows. The entire Black Demon Sword sect should be a force of the Black Demon Cave. For some reason, they secretly sent some people to build a so-called Black Demon Sword sect in the Peach Blossom Cove. On the one hand, they constantly absorbed all kinds of cultivation geniuses, and on the other hand, they coveted the treasures at the foot of the Peach Blossom Cove. The latter, Chu Liyue could understand. What they wanted to fight for should be those thin blue crystals. It was just that they didn't expect that after all the work, it would be intercepted by her in the end. But Chu Liyue still didn't understand the former. Why did the Black Demon Cave secretly recruit so many cultivators? They kept the talented ones, and killed the ordinary ones directly. What exactly do they want to do? Thinking of the various scenes she had seen before, Chu Liyue felt a chill run down her spine. In the past few years, the Black Demon Cave seemed to be hiding from the world, but in fact, all kinds of secret movements had not decreased at all. Rong Xiu suddenly said, "Do you still remember the scene when you got that shield?" Digression, 7 o'clock. From this month onwards, February will become a diligent February again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1928. I remember. Chu Liyue put away the heavenly square cauldron and walked toward Rong Xiu. What's wrong? Rong Xiu said. Some of the people who fought with us back then were from the Black Demon Cave. Chu Liyue was stunned at first, and a trace of surprise flashed across her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. I should have thought of it. At that time, the Peach Blossom Cove was filled with all kinds of people, and no one knew each other's identities. Moreover, there were even more people involved in the robbery of treasures, and it was impossible to investigate everyone's background. Chu Liyue didn't know that she had obtained a top-tier divine artifact, so she didn't pay much attention to it after the matter was over. Now that she thought about it, the people from the Black Demon Cave had been after the Black Shield from the beginning. Or perhaps, the zither score in her body. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. Rong Xiu reached out to her, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her forehead. Don't worry, no matter who comes, I'm here. Chu Liyue looked up and glanced at him. You mean the people from the Black Demon Cave, and the Nan family will all come here? Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. She was still smart, and she could always guess what he meant. It shouldn't be just them. Rong Xiu held her waist, intertwining his fingers with hers, and a dark look flashed across his eyes. The Peach Blossom Cove is a treasure trove, and many people have coveted it for so many years. But because of the unstable barrier, they haven't been able to make a move. Now that you've taken over the Peach Blossom Cove, many people will undoubtedly be jealous. Chu Liyue had already thought of this. These days, she had asked Sun Yi and the others to hurry up with the various matters of the Peach Blossom Cove in preparation for the impending crisis. However, that might not be enough. The people from the Yuntian Tower will be here soon. The Peach Blossom Cove is yours, and no one can take it from you. Rong Xiu's voice was gentle, but it carried a strong pressure that could not be disobeyed. There seemed to be waves surging in the depths of his eyes. Chu Liyue gently nodded. Don't worry, I can protect my own things. The news of Chu Liyue occupying the Peach Blossom Cove quickly spread throughout the Divine Ruins world. All the aristocratic families and clans were in an uproar, their hearts filled with shock. Peach Blossom Dock. That was a delicious cake that countless people in the Divine Ruins world were secretly eyeing. Abundant heaven and earth energy, an excellent geographical location, endless resources that had never been exploited. It was simply a new and ideal world. Even though countless people had returned in defeat over the years, there were still quite a few people who held on to that tiny bit of hope, hoping to find an opportunity to take over the Peach Blossom Cove for themselves. Most of those who had this idea were first-rate families and clans. Those who were weaker in terms of level and strength knew that they had no chance of success, even though it was an extravagant wish. Countless people had thought of this question. Who would Peach Blossom Dock belong to in the end? Those first-rate families and clans in the Divine Ruins world all had this kind of hope for themselves. But now, before anyone could react, there was news that the Peach Blossom Cove had been taken over, and that person was Chu Liyue. What was her identity? The princess consort of the Yuntian Tower Saint Rongxiu, the direct disciple of Lingxiao College's dean, Nan Suhui, the descendant of the weapon-refining venerable, Sheng Guanjing. Recently, this name had become famous throughout the entire Divine Ruins world, not only because of these identities, but also because of the close relationship between her and the two ancient Divine Beast clans. Who didn't know that her contracted Divine Beast was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? Who didn't know that the clan leader of the Great Phoenix Dragon clan had specially gone to the Yuntian Tower to give her and Rongxiu a congratulatory gift? Even so, it was still unbelievable that she had taken over the Peach Blossom Cove. Not to mention, it was rumored that she had relied on her own strength to reconstruct the barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove. It was simply a fantasy. So many first-rate families and clans had mobilized their entire clan to take over the Peach Blossom Cove. But they had all failed. How could such a young girl do it? No one was willing to believe it. However, the news that came later made them believe that the Peach Blossom Cove was now completely under Chu Liyue's control. I heard that her subordinates are now in charge of the entire Peach Blossom Cove. Now the two entrances of the Peach Blossom Cove, one is connected to the Gate Realm, and the other is facing the interior. Both entrances have been heavily guarded by her subordinates. Anyone who enters or exits will have to undergo strict scrutiny. Family E. In front of the ancestral hall, a solemn family meeting was being held. All the important people of Family E had gathered here. Originally, their most important task today was to choose the Family Yi's young master. However, the sudden news from the Peach Blossom Cove had caused an uproar. They couldn't help but shift part of their attention to the Peach Blossom Cove. Although Family E rarely got involved in these matters in the world of God, it didn't mean that they didn't pay attention to it. Moreover, Family E had been harboring some thoughts about the Peach Blossom Cove all these years. Now before they could make a move, someone else had beaten them to it. Who could accept it? An old man said as he stroked his beard and sighed. It's only been a few days. That's really fast. How could she take over the Peach Blossom Cove by herself? I think the power behind this matter is most likely from the Yuntian Tower. Another old man sneered coldly. The Yuntian Tower was actually referring to Rongxiu. Many people nodded in agreement. Chu Liyue and Rongxiu were husband and wife. How could Rongxiu not be involved in this matter? I heard that the subordinates that Sheng Guanyu brought with her were previously her subordinates outside the world of God. I don't think they are very capable and can't handle the matters in the Peach Blossom Cove well. The people behind this must be from the Yuntian Tower, right? Someone guessed. In fact, more than one person thought so. Almost everyone had the same thought. The old man who spoke first frowned and said hesitantly, "But I received news that Sheng Guanyu has a subordinate who seems to have been in the Peach Blossom Cove for a few years and is doing very well. I think he's called Boss San. He's quite famous. Didn't this prove that she and her subordinates were actually quite capable?" However, most people didn't think much of this. Who knows what's going on? Anyway, I think that Shangguan Yu took over the Peach Blossom Cove with the help of a lot of people. That's how she became it. She didn't even think about how powerful her backer was. What a pity. It's such a good place. Jun Jiuqing sat in his seat and lowered his eyes slightly. No expression could be seen on his face. Just as everyone was lamenting, Yi Wentao walked out of the ancestral hall. Everyone quickly quieted down. Young master family Yi, I already have a suitable candidate in mind. Yi Wentao's gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on Jun Jiuqing. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1929. The crowd followed his gaze. The 9 ministers are extremely talented and capable. They are undoubtedly the best candidates for the position of young master. Yi Wentao's expression was as gentle as ever, but his tone was deep and powerful. Every single word was clearly transmitted to the ears of every single person present. The crowd was silent as they looked at each other with different expressions. In fact, they had already expected this outcome. The competition for the position of young master of the family Yi was very intense. However, Jun Jiuqing easily stood at the top after his appearance. Even those who disliked him had to admit that no one in the younger generation of the family Yi could compare to Jun Jiuqing in terms of talent and ability. After a while, an elder said hesitantly, "You're right. The 9 ministers are indeed very outstanding, but his surname is Jun after all." The ancestor of the Baiming dynasty had married a daughter of the family Yi 1,000 years ago. They had given birth to a child, but the power of the bloodline in the child's body was too thin. The family Yi felt embarrassed and ordered the child to be sent back to the Baiming dynasty. For so many years, no one in the imperial family of the Baiming dynasty had inherited the power of the bloodline. That was until Jun Jiuqing appeared. Not only did he have the power of the family Yi's bloodline, but it was also very pure. Moreover, he had Yi Wentao as his master. This made him even more confident in the family Yi. However, this was one thing. Becoming the young master was another. In fact, this was the biggest reason why most people objected to him becoming the young master. However, Yi Wentao did not seem to care. When he heard this, he only chuckled softly. However, the power of the family Yi's bloodline also flows in the 9 ministers' bodies, isn't it? Moreover, the power of his bloodline was very pure and of a very high level. It was just a surname. What was the big deal? The power of his bloodline determined that he was a member of the family Yi. After hearing Yi Wentao's words, the crowd did not say anything else. His intentions were very clear. He had already made up his mind to choose Jun Jiuqing as the young master. In family Yi, no one could go against Yi Wentao's wishes. All they could do was obey. Yi Wenzhua, who was sitting beside Jun Jiuqing, finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Big Brother still made such a choice in the end. His heart was faintly excited, and he had to tightly grasp the armrest of the chair to barely suppress his excitement. He was Jun Jiuqing's master. In the future, when Jun Jiuqing became the young master of the family Yi, his status would definitely rise as well. Although he was Yi Wentao's younger brother, he rarely interfered with the clan's affairs. Most of the time, he didn't have much say. Now that he had a relationship with Jun Jiuqing, naturally, it was different. "Jiuqing, come here." Yi Wentao waved at Jun Jiuqing. Jun Jiuqing stood up and strode over with his long legs. A jade thumb ring appeared in Yi Wentao's hand. The jade thumb ring was light green and clear. Family Yi's totem was engraved on it. Seeing this item, many people were envious. This was the status symbol of the family Yi's young master. For so many years, family Yi hadn't chosen a young master. They didn't expect that when they finally chose one, it would be an outsider. Naturally, everyone's feelings were very complicated. The surroundings were silent. Yi Wentao handed the jade thumb ring to Jun Jiuqing. Jun Jiuqing's expression was slightly restrained. He took the ring and put it on his finger. At this moment, the totem on the jade thumb ring suddenly flashed brightly. A powerful aura suddenly descended upon the area. Almost at the same time, the same totem appeared between Jun Jiuqing's eyebrows. A majestic power surged out from the jade thumb ring and poured into his body. The aura around his body also grew stronger. After about a quarter of an hour, the fluctuations gradually subsided. Yi Wentao's face showed some satisfaction. Jiuqing, you really didn't disappoint me. The jade thumb ring's reaction meant that it recognized Jun Jiuqing as the young master. In the future, he would be Family Yi's young master. Jun Jiuqing laughed. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows carried a hint of devilishness. Thank you for your favor, family head. You're outstanding enough. Yi Wentao patted his shoulder. His eyes were full of undisguised admiration. Seeing this, what else did everyone not understand? Yi Wentao was clearly on Jun Jiuqing's side. From now on, Jun Jiuqing's status in Family Yi and even in the entire world of God would be different. Actually, besides choosing a young master today, there's another matter that I want to discuss with everyone. Yi Wentao looked at everyone again. His smile faded a little, and he looked a little more serious. Everyone realized that he was about to say something important. They all perked up and looked over. The atmosphere became a little cold. After several years of depletion, the energy of heaven and earth in Meha County is no longer the same as before. For the sake of Family Yi, we need to find another place with abundant energy as soon as possible. Yi Wentao went straight to the point. Everyone present was stunned for a moment. In fact, they were well aware of this point. They just didn't say it out loud before. After all, such words were not pleasant to hear. If word got out, it would easily cause panic in the entire family. No one expected Yi Wentao to take the initiative and say it so bluntly. Yi Wentao looked around with a magnanimous expression. Everyone, there's no need to panic. All the aristocratic families in the world of God will face this problem. It's not just our family, Yi. This was the truth. The world of God was vast and had abundant energy of heaven and earth. But at the same time, it also contained countless dangers. If any faction wanted to truly develop, they needed to have a stable place to cultivate. As time passed, the energy of heaven and earth in the corresponding area would be depleted. Over time, it would naturally become less and less. When the density of origin power fell below a certain level, it was no longer suitable to stay. After all, this would affect the cultivation of everyone in the aristocratic families. This was extremely important to any faction. In fact, over the years, many aristocratic families in the world of God had already begun to look for a better place to settle down. Some succeeded, some failed. The reason why the family Yi had such a big reaction was because the status of the family Yi was higher than that of the first-rate aristocratic families. Whether it was the superior cultivation environment of Meha County or other aspects, they could easily crush others in almost all aspects. They were used to being high and mighty. Now, Yi Wentao suddenly announced that they were looking for another place. Of course, it was difficult for them to accept. But everyone, don't worry. Although the current Meha County is slightly inferior to the original, it's still better than many of the first-rate aristocratic families. The reason why we're doing this now is just to be prepared. Yi Wentao's next sentence finally made everyone's expressions look better. He paused for a moment, then continued. Moreover, it's rare that a place more suitable for cultivation than Meha County has appeared. Naturally, we can't miss it. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1930. Many people looked at each other. Someone asked tentatively, Family head, are you talking about Peach Blossom Dock? Yi Wentao nodded. That's right. Peach Blossom Dock is rich in heaven and earth energy. Although people have been coming in and out of it over the years, due to the turbulence in the void and the instability of the barrier, the resources it contains have not been used up. Moreover, its location is very special, and it is indeed a very suitable choice. Yi Wentao's words were very straightforward. He did not hide his determination to take over Peach Blossom Dock. Someone said hesitantly, but Peach Blossom Dock is now Shangguanyu's territory. If we go there recklessly, I'm afraid. Yi Wentao smiled. She is the wife of Rong Xiao, the son of Yuntian Tower. What is she doing in Peach Blossom Dock? Many people nodded. What he said made sense. Moreover, the two of them had just gotten married. Chu Liuyue's actions inevitably made people think more. However, they could not rule out the possibility that this was Rong Xiu's intention. Was he not interested in Peach Blossom Dock at all? Everyone had heard that Peach Blossom Dock belonged to Chu Luiyue, but perhaps the real master was Rong Xiu. Moreover, in the world of divine ruins, the strong are respected. Yi Wentao was still smiling, but there was a hint of arrogance in his eyes. Even if Peach Blossom Dock belonged to Shang Guanyu, she would be able to defend it. Jiuqing, what do you think? He turned his head and looked at Jun Jiuqing. Jun Jiuqing's eyes flashed. Family head, you are right. Yi Wentao nodded. In that case, everyone should go back and prepare. We will set off tomorrow. Family head Yi had made up his mind to attack Peach Blossom Dock. However, they were not the only ones who made the same choice. The Nan family. It was already night time, but the lights on the top of the mountain were still bright. In a solemn and spacious room, all the elders of the Nan family were gathered here. As the patriarch, Nan Yifan sat at the head of the table. The air seemed to have frozen, and everyone was silent. After a long while, Nan Yifan finally said, "That's how it is." Yu Xing and the others had originally gone to Peach Blossom Dock to look for Yi's murderer, but they ended up finding Rong Xiu and Shang Guanyu. However, not long after they sent the news back, his voice was heavy and hoarse. His face was haggard, a face that no one had ever seen before. It could be seen how much of a blow this matter had dealt to him. The crowd grew even quieter. If all of this was true, didn't that mean that the ones who killed Nan Yi, Nan Yuxing, and the others were all Rong Xiu's group? Apart from Yuxing, more than half of the 8 elders who went with him were killed. If his guess was correct, there should only be Luo Yan and the other 3 left. Up until now, there had been no news from them. I think the situation isn't good. The more Nan Yifan spoke, the uglier everyone's expression became. Most people didn't know that Nan Yuxing and the others had gone to Peach Blossom Dock. When they received the news, they heard that 5 elders had already been killed. Nan Yuxing, who was most likely to become the next patriarch, was also dead. Rong Xiu, Shang Guanyu, they've gone too far. An elder finally couldn't help but shout angrily, "Patriarch, we must make them pay for this. Isn't it just a Yuntian tower? Do you think our Nan family is afraid of them? That's right. Since they're so presumptuous, don't blame us for being rude." Flatten Peach Blossom Dock. Digression. The list of Shuqing and Xiaoxiang's neighbors will be posted in the comments section tonight. Pay attention to it. Continue at 6 o'clock, mobile users. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1931. All kinds of voices sounded. It seemed that everyone was angry and resentful about this matter, and couldn't wait to go to Peach Blossom Dock to take revenge. However, was that really the case? Nan Yifan lowered his eyes to hide the sneer in his eyes. He knew all too well what these people were like. On the surface, they seemed to be united against a common enemy, but in reality, some of them might be overjoyed. Nanny's death didn't affect them much. However, Nan Yuxing was also dead. This time, there was no longer a suitable candidate in Nan Yifan's line to become the successor of the Nan family. The Nan family seemed to be harmonious, but the competition between the lines was fierce. A few years ago, the situation was only stabilized because of Nan Yuxing's outstanding talent and Nan Yifan's strength. But it was different now. Nan Yuxing was dead, and Nan Yifan was visibly haggard. The immense grief almost caused him to break down. He couldn't divert so much attention to care about other things. But he didn't want to care anymore. Too many things had happened during this period of time, and the successive blows almost broke him. Everyone only thought that he was grieving because of the loss of his 2 beloved children. But who knew the real torture in his heart? He had paid such a huge price and even personally sent Nan Yi to a dead end, dying without a complete corpse in exchange for Nan Yuxing's life. In the end, not long after, he died in Peach Blossom Dock. Nan Yifan knew that many of the people below had ulterior motives, but he couldn't be bothered. The only thing he wanted to do now was to take revenge. He must make Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue pay with their blood. Anyway, he had nothing to lose, so why should he be so afraid of them? He nodded. Then this time, the blood debt and reputation of the Nan family will depend on all of you. The people in the meeting quickly dispersed. Only Nan Yifan was left in the huge room. Nan Hetian walked over. Master, it's late. You haven't slept for a few days. You should go and rest first, he said worriedly. Previously, Nan Yifan rushed to Family E overnight and sent him to stay here. He originally thought that he would stay there for a few days. But in the end, he returned very quickly. Calculating the time, Nan Yifan had only stayed in the Family E for a few hours. When he came back, he didn't even have time to catch his breath before he summoned everyone from his clan to discuss this matter. They decided to attack the Peach Blossom Dock. Even if he was made of iron, he wouldn't be able to withstand such continuous torment. Nan Yifan shook his head. I can't sleep. The moment he closed his eyes, his mind would be filled with images of Nan Yi and Nan Yuxing's face. These scenes kept flashing in his mind, like sharp blades stabbing into his heart again and again, causing him to bleed profusely. How could he sleep? Nan Hetian sighed. He had followed Nan Yifan for many years and knew him the best. Although Nan Yifan didn't explicitly mention this matter to him, he could more or less guess some of it. Nan Hetian paused for a moment and comforted him. Don't worry, family head. Although that person is not to be trifled with, since Family E is willing to help us this time, our chances of winning aren't small. The corners of Nan Yifan's mouth suddenly twitched. His expression was a little stiff and sarcastic. Yes, he was not to be trifled with. The Nan family members either died or were injured this time. Several god venerables joined forces, but they were all wiped out. Until now, not a single person had escaped, and no news had been sent back. He could imagine what kind of situation Luo Yan and the others were in now in the Peach Blossom Dock. This was the warning Rong Xiu gave him. If it was in the past, he wouldn't be so stubborn as to go against Rong Xiu. But now he really had no other choice. At this point, even if we don't do anything, he won't let us go. Most people in the Nan family didn't know that Nan Yifan was actually very afraid of Rong Xiu. In their opinion, although Rong Xiu was somewhat famous, he was only the successor of Yuntian Tower. They had nothing to be afraid of from a first-class family. Nan Yifan deliberately didn't say so much, because the more they knew, the more concerns they would have. Nan Hetian frowned even more. He was actually very worried in his heart. But just as Nan Yifan said, they had no way out now. I wonder how Luo Yan and the others are doing. Nan Yifan frowned. This was actually what he was quite worried about. If Luo Yan and the others betrayed them and said something they shouldn't, then it would be very disadvantageous for them. If the Nan family members knew the truth, they definitely wouldn't let him go. At that time, he would be in an even more difficult situation. Not only would he not be able to take revenge, but he would also lose his life. In addition, he was also worried about the flowing cloud flying diagram. Nan Yuxing was dead. That thing had most likely fallen into the hands of Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue. Thinking of this, Nan Yifan felt even more uncomfortable. You can leave first. I want to be alone. He waved his hand. Nan Hetian opened his mouth, but hesitated. Looking at Nan Yifan's tired and haggard face, he finally bowed. Yes. He took a few steps back and left quietly. Nan Yifan let out a long breath. Now, he could only hope that everything would go smoothly. Peach Blossom Dock. You manner. Moonlight as cool as water flowed in through the window. Chu Luiyue was standing alone in the room. In front of her, a black shield floated quietly. After the previous baptism, the rust on it had completely peeled off, revealing its bright and new appearance. Complex and mysterious inscriptions were engraved on it, exuding a vast and distant ancient aura. It still had a dull and black color, but it looked deeper and heavier. This feeling was difficult to describe, but Chu Luiyue could indeed feel a huge difference. Those faint blue crystals, after fusing with it, quickly disappeared. At this time, except for the dense and complicated inscriptions, nothing else could be seen. Chu Luiyue stared at the inscriptions for a long time. The surroundings were silent, and she could clearly hear her own heartbeat. There seemed to be waves surging in the depths of her clear and bright eyes. After a long time, she stretched out her hand and slowly brushed it over the black shield. An indescribable throbbing came from it. Celestial shield. she murmured in a low voice. As if it had some kind of reaction, the black shield in front of her, under the inscriptions, flashed with light again. Chu Liyue pursed her lips. That day, after the last piece of faint blue crystal was perfectly embedded on it, this name appeared in her mind. This thing had been with her for several years, and only then did she know its true name. She had read countless ancient books, but she had never heard of this name. But this was not what Chu Liyue cared about the most. At this time, what made her feel complicated was the inscriptions on it. Because, when she saw the inscriptions completely, she realized that her previous notebook also used this language. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1932. After Chu Liyue regained her identity, she had been carrying that notebook with her. Now it was lying in her interspatial ring. She didn't need to compare it to know that it was the same language. This made Chu Liyue feel very complicated. Back then, she had lost her memory and couldn't understand the contents of the notebook. However, when she recalled the divine realm at Lingxiao College and regained her memory, she realized that she still couldn't understand it. At that time, she vaguely felt that something was wrong. But later, various things came one after another, and she gradually put this matter aside. Until now, when she saw the secret text on it, the puzzlement and doubts that had been buried in her heart surged again. This armillary shield was obviously a very ancient divine artifact, and the secret text on it must have been engraved on it a long time ago. Then, why did she use the same words in her notebook? When she first came to the Divine Ruins world, she clearly didn't come into contact with such content. But it was indeed her handwriting on it. Chu Liyue rubbed her temples with a headache. Previously, she had asked Rong Xiu, and Rong Xiu also said that he didn't recognize the inscription on it. What was going on? Thinking of this, Chu Liyue couldn't help but touch the space between her eyebrows. When the God-destroying tribulation descended, the armillary shield was completely awakened. At that time, she clearly felt a burning sensation between her eyebrows. This wasn't the first time such a situation had happened. It had happened when she was in danger several times before. It was just that it wasn't as intense as this time. At that moment, she almost thought that a flame was burning between her eyebrows. In fact, the force in her body seemed to be affected, as if it was about to boil. But this feeling lasted for a very short time. And every time such a situation happened, the situation was usually very urgent. So she had never had the time to study this problem. She didn't know if there were any secrets hidden in it. Just as Chu Liyue was deep in thought, a series of familiar footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. She came back to her senses, put away the shield, and looked at the door. A tall figure walked in. It was Rong Xiu. Seeing Chu Liyue standing alone in the room, Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and smiled. Waiting for me? Chu Liyue snorted. Of course not. Rong Xiu did not mind. If she was not waiting for him, could it be that she was waiting for someone else? He walked over and wrapped his long arms around Chu Liyue's slender waist. He pulled her into his embrace and bent down to kiss her. Chu Liyue tilted her head and dodged. She raised her head and looked at him with bright eyes. Have you arranged everything in the Peach Blossom Dock City? Rong Xiu pinched her nose. Of course. Are you still worried about what your husband is doing? Chu Liyue certainly wouldn't doubt Rong Xiu's ability. Last night, he said that the people from Yuntian Tower would arrive today. In the end they did. And there seemed to be quite a number of them. However, Chu Liyue stayed in the U residence and did not go out to take a look. Everything was arranged by Rong Xiu. She shook her head and thought for a while. I'm just thinking. Peach Blossom Dock finally had a few days of peace. I think it's going to be chaotic again. During this period, the 13 U residents, and those who had chosen to follow the U residents had been working overtime. However, the damage to Peach Blossom Dock was too severe. They could only recover part of it in a short period of time. It would take a lot of time and energy to rebuild Peach Blossom Dock. Unfortunately, those people did not intend to give them the chance. This trouble will come sooner or later. It's better to do it sooner. Rong Xiu's thin lips curved slightly. A cold smile flashed across his eyes. Chu Liyue nodded. I know. She had taken over Peach Blossom Dock, and many people would be jealous. Instead of waiting for them to secretly make a move, it was better to cut the Gordian knot now. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. The next day came quickly. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged. As usual, she circulated the force in her body for a major cycle. Then she slowly opened her eyes. There seemed to be light flickering in her bright eyes. After obtaining a divine body, I'm indeed different from before. Chu Luiyue clenched her fists and sighed emotionally. She had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian. Her cultivation speed was already faster than most cultivators. After cultivating a divine body, her cultivation had improved greatly. Moreover, after absorbing the energy of heaven and earth and converting it into her own force, it was purer than before. No wonder everyone wanted to cultivate a divine body. At that thought, Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. It had been a long time since she had seen Debao and the rest. Debao had helped her in the dark during the calamity at Lingxiao College. However, he had left without seeing her. Now that she thought about it, it had been a long time. There was also Diwu Zhangze and Lan Xiao, the two seniors. She would have to make time to return to the Red Moon Desert after everything here was over. She remembered that the two of them did not have a divine body yet. She wondered if she would be able to help them refine their divine bodies, like she had helped Debao. Now that her strength had improved a lot, it shouldn't be difficult for her to help them. Suddenly, she felt a faint wave of energy. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up and looked outside the window. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Master, Your Highness, someone is here. It was Cinyi's voice. The so-called someone is here. Needless to say, Chu Luiyue could guess who it was. She stood up and walked over to open the door. Someone from the Nan family? Cinyi nodded and then continued. Also, Family E. Chu Luiyue frowned and looked back at Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao's expression was calm, as if he was not surprised. Chu Luiyue held her breath. They came together? Digression. 7 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1933. Cinyi's expression instantly became subtle. His long and indifferent eyes narrowed slightly, and he seemed to smile. There's only a quarter of an hour difference. Chu Luiyue instantly understood what he meant. She frowned and then sneered. So Family E also wants to get involved in this mess. Rong Xiao also walked over. These two families aren't close. In the past few years, they haven't interacted much with each other. Chu Luiyue was more and more certain of her guess. It seemed that these two families had indeed joined forces. However, Family E didn't have any obvious conflicts of interest with them. They did this because the Nan family instigated them. It seems that Nan Yifan isn't completely unscrupulous. At least he managed to get Family E to come to help. In order to rope in this ally, he probably made a lot of sacrifices. Chu Luiyue felt that it was a little ridiculous. It was obvious that the Nan family was in the wrong, and had offended them first. Now they actually had the nerve to come again. They even pulled in an ally. 24 people from the Nan family came. Including Nan Yifan, there are a total of 8 gods. There were 18 people from the Yi clan, but there were 10 from Her Eminence, more than half of them. Cinyi's voice was as calm as ever. Right now they're all gathered outside the barrier, confronting our people and asking you and His Highness to come out. Chu Luiyue nodded. We'll go now. They were waiting for them. She wanted to see who dared to bully her. These two families had a total of 18 gods. It should be known that an ordinary first-rate aristocratic family would only have 5 or 6 god-revered experts. And they had sent so many of them to attack Peach Blossom Cove this time. It was obvious that their family's foundation was indeed very strong. However, this time, it was still unknown who would have the last laugh. Outside Peach Blossom Cove's barrier, the Nan family and Family E stood on both sides. There was a distance between them. The relationship between the two families was indeed delicate, especially at this time when they were all at Peach Blossom Cove. Other than Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao, the others were completely unaware of the alliance. Therefore, when the two sides met, most people still maintained a high level of vigilance towards each other. Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao greeted each other politely, and explained that their targets were Chu Luyue and Rong Xiao. Then they began to wait. The atmosphere was tense. At the city gate, the group of guards in charge of guarding the city were all on high alert as they stared at the people from the Nan family and Family E. Someone in the Family E crowd couldn't help but whisper. When I heard those rumors before, I didn't quite believe them. However, judging from the current situation, Peach Blossom Dock has most likely fallen into the hands of Sheng Guanyu and his men. In the past, Peach Blossom Dock had always been a place where people could enter and exit freely. Yes. Also, have you all noticed that the barrier seems a little different? Also, the guards in charge of guarding it seem to be very loyal and devoted. When has the Peach Blossom Dock ever seen such a scene? I reckon that the rumor is somewhat credible. I just don't know how they did it. Everyone was discussing in low voices. They didn't quite believe it before. But now that they saw it with their own eyes, they couldn't help but doubt it. These guards looked different from those who had undergone formal training. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that they were a loose army. However, the aura of these people didn't seem weak at all. More importantly, their expressions were surprisingly similar. Their eyes said, "If you dare to come in, we will dare to beat you to death." They are really guarding Peach Blossom Dock. Yu Wentao and Nan Yifan were watching from the side. They exchanged a glance without batting an eyelid. They could also see the vigilance in each other's eyes. Before they came, they all thought that Rong Xiao would directly send his men to attack. These were obviously not his soldiers. However, these people were surprisingly united. It was as if guarding Peach Blossom Dock was their greatest responsibility. Moreover, from their words, it was obvious that they respected Chu Luyue very much. In the entire world of God, who didn't know that Peach Blossom Dock had all kinds of people? To be able to command all these people, the means behind this was really shocking and unsettling. Yu Wentao put his hands behind his back and faintly felt that things were different from what he had expected. If there were more people like this in Peach Blossom Dock City, then it wouldn't be so easy to take down Peach Blossom Dock. Nan Yifan didn't think too much. This time, he came with the intention of cutting off all means of retreat. Therefore, even if Peach Blossom Dock was difficult to deal with, he would never turn back. There was no turning back for him. He looked up at the sky and twitched the corner of his mouth without a smile. "We have been here for a long time. Why are you taking so long to report the news? Or are there people who are afraid and don't dare to come out? The Holy Son and Princess of Yuntian Tower are so cowardly?" A guard stepped forward and said coldly, "Watch your words." These two were not people they could offend. At the same time, the people behind him drew their swords and sabers. Nan Yifan couldn't help but frown. These people looked like people from all walks of life. Why did they seem to be so protective of Chu Luyue and Rong Xiao? However, this thought just flashed through his mind. He reprimanded coldly, "I was just telling the truth. Can I do that? Rong Xiao and Sheng Guanyu killed my son and the elders of the Nan family. Today my Nan clan will definitely settle this debt." All the guards looked at each other with a solemn expression. Nan Yusheng and the others had indeed died in their hands. It was reasonable that the Nan family would come to make them pay. After a while, one of the guards sneered. "Didn't they ask for it? If they didn't force and chase after them, Master, you wouldn't have done anything to them. They only have themselves to blame." Nan Yifan, Yu Wentao, and the others were stunned. "Master Yu? Did he mean Chu Luyue? Did he mean that they respected and admired Chu Luyue more than Rong Xiao?" At this moment, a clear and pleasant voice was heard. "Honorable guests, please forgive me for not coming out to greet you." Everyone looked over at the same time. Two people were walking out of the city, hand in hand. The person who spoke was Chu Luyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1934. Seeing the smile on Chu Luyue's face, Nan Yifan was instantly enraged. His only son had died in the Peach Blossom Dock at the hands of these people. How could she still smile? What was the meaning of this? Contempt? Provocation? However, just at that moment, a gaze filled with coldness landed on his body, causing him to tremble with fear. Nan Yifan subconsciously looked at Rong Xiao, who was standing aside. and couldn't help but shudder. A trace of fear grew from the bottom of his heart. Nan Yifan clenched his fists and forcibly dispelled these chaotic emotions. At this point, he had no choice but to shed all pretenses of cordiality with Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao's eyes swept over Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao, and his thin lips curved slightly. Family head Nan, long time no see. How have you been? Nan Yifan's heart was filled with hatred. So many members of the Nan family had died in their hands. Shouldn't they know best whether they were fine? How could they have the nerve to ask such a question? Yi Wentao put his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. His expression was gentle and polite. Greetings to the Holy Sun. As he spoke, his eyes fell on Chu Luiyue, sizing her up and scrutinizing her. He had heard of this woman's name countless times, but this was the first time he had seen her with his own eyes. She looked no more than 17 or 18 years old, with a slim figure and a beautiful face. In particular, her starry eyes had a calmness that didn't match her age. It was as if these things in front of her didn't affect her at all, even if she knew what all this meant. Yi Wentao had a new level of respect for Chu Luiyue. A woman who could attract Rong Xiao's attention and insist on marrying was indeed extraordinary. In fact, Yi Wentao wasn't the only one. Family Yi and the people of the Nan family were now focused on Chu Luiyue. They were actually filled with curiosity towards this woman, who had risen to fame in the Divine Ruins world in such a short period of time. Of course, while they were looking at Chu Luiyue was also looking at them. The Nan clan had 8 honorable gods and 16 high gods. Family Yi, 10 venerable gods, 8 high gods. Moreover, the strength of those high gods was not to be underestimated. It seemed that the two families had really put in a lot of effort to deal with her. The smile on Chu Luiyue's face grew even brighter. Nan Yifan couldn't bear to see Chu Luiyue laugh. It was very dazzling. Amidst the strange silence, he was the first to sneer. What? You're finally willing to come out? I thought you were planning to hide in Peach Blossom Dock for the rest of your life. His voice was cold, and his eyes were filled with undisguised hatred. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to care as she smiled. She said with a smile, Patriarch Nan, why do you say that? Peach Blossom Dock is my territory. My husband and I have just been married. Isn't it normal for us to come and stay for a while to relax? Besides, we didn't do anything wrong. Why do you say that we're hiding? Nan Yifan's face turned red with anger, and the veins on his forehead bulged. This Chu Luiyue was always sharp-tongued. My son Nan Yuxing died in Peach Blossom Dock a few days ago. As the culprits, don't you feel guilty at all? Nan Yifan suddenly raised his hand, pointed at Chu Luiyue, and questioned sternly. Rong Xiao's face turned cold, and he immediately took a step forward. A powerful aura suddenly descended upon them. At the same time, a fiery golden glow flashed across his eyes. Nan Yifan, if you don't want your hand anymore, just say it. His tone was low, and his voice was cold, as if it was mixed with ice shards. Nan Yifan's heart trembled, and his fingers curled. However, he soon realized that he was too cowardly. For a moment, Nan Yifan was angry and annoyed. He had already planned to fight to the death, but when Rong Xiao spoke, he still subconsciously felt awe and fear. Nan Yifan was very embarrassed. Chu Luiyue glanced at him from the corner of his eye and raised his eyebrows. Nan Yifan's reaction was a little ridiculous. If he had more confidence, he wouldn't be like this. She took Rong Xiao's hand and shook her head gently, indicating that he didn't need to be angry with this kind of person. It wasn't worth it. She looked at Nan Yifan and said frankly, Master Nan, it seems that there is some misunderstanding in this. Your son Nan Yuxing didn't die in our hands. The one who really killed him was none other than the elder of your Nan family, Luo Yan. Nan Yifan was so angry that he laughed. Shang Guanyu, do you know what kind of nonsense you're talking about? Luo Yan came with them this time to protect Nan Yuxing. How could he kill him? Even if you want to frame me, please don't find such a ridiculous reason. Chu Luiyue knew that he wouldn't believe her, so she raised her eyebrows and curled her lips without a smile. Countless people in Peach Blossom Dock saw this with their own eyes, and can testify. If you don't believe me, you can ask someone. You also said that this is very ridiculous. Don't I know that? If it's not true, why would I say that? Chu Liyue's words made Nan Yifan waver for a moment. But this thought just flashed through his mind. He said angrily, Peach Blossom Dock is now under your control. Those people only listen to you. How can there be truth in their mouths? Chu Liyue followed his advice smoothly. You don't believe what we say, or what outsiders say. Then, you should at least believe the words of your own elders, right? Nan Yifan's expression froze for a moment. What? It's literally what I said. When Luo Yan ended Nan Yuxing's life with his own hands, Nan Hongyang and the other elders were all watching. Chu Liyue curled her lips and said word by word. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask the elders to come over and confront me? Nan Yifan's breath stopped. Chu Liyue is serious. She really dares to confront me. Could it be that what she said was true? The person who killed Nan Yuxing was actually Luo Yan? But what is going on? Nan Yifan's mind was a mess. No, it's impossible. When he sent people over this time, he specially selected the elders he trusted the most to ensure his safety. Luo Yan couldn't have killed Nan Yuxing, and the remaining elders couldn't have betrayed him. Nan Yifan clenched his fists and tried to convince himself. However, Chu Liyue's words were like a thorn that pierced his heart. It made him extremely uncomfortable. Behind him, the people of the Nan family were also shocked and looked at each other. Their first reaction was, of course, disbelief. But Chu Liyue said with certainty, and even said that they could confront him. Who knows if you guys used some despicable means to force them to lie? After struggling for a while, Nan Yifan finally thought of a rebuttal and shouted, They have already fallen into your hands. Aren't they at your mercy? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1935. Chu Liyue laughed when he heard that. I didn't expect Master Nan to look down on your family's god experts so much. Nan Yifan's face turned green and pale at the sarcastic remark. I don't think I need to remind Master Nan. Among the people who came before, there were 5 god experts among the remaining 8 elders, except for Nan Yuxing. Chu Liyue shrugged. Even though there are only 4 of them left, they're still reputable god realm experts. Master Nan said that they are at my mercy. I don't know if you think too highly of me, or look down on your family. Nan Yifan's chest heaved violently. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Shangguanyu, don't go too far. I'm just telling the truth. How is that going too far? Chu Liyue blinked his eyes, looking puzzled. Didn't you say those words yourself, Patriarch Nan? Everyone in the Nan family, you should have heard it too, right? Everyone in the Nan family fell into silence. They were extremely embarrassed. They couldn't understand. They were the ones who came to suppress Chu Liyue and the others. Why were they the ones being questioned in the end? Nan Yifan took a deep breath and finally regained his senses. You, no matter what, my son, Nan Yuxing, and the 4 elders of the Nan clan have all died here. Do you dare to say that these things have nothing to do with you? Today, you must give the Nan family an explanation. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Chu Liyue asked curiously. When has Master Nan ever been polite to me? In the past, he was quite respectful and polite to Rong Xiao. But now he was no longer like that. Why did it sound like he was very nice to them in the past? Nan Yifan almost couldn't breathe. He finally realized that Chu Liyue was indeed born with a sharp tongue. It wasn't enough to describe her as eloquent. He couldn't win against her in an argument. He would only make himself angry. By the way, since Patriarch Nan mentioned it, I'll just say it directly. In fact, even if you didn't come this time, we still plan to find an opportunity to pay you a visit. Chu Liyue raised his chin. Because we also happen to be looking for the Nan family, to ask for an explanation. Nan Yifan almost thought that he had misheard. He had never seen such an arrogant person. They were the ones who had come to the Peach Blossom Cove to demand an explanation. Not only had she refused to give them an explanation, she had even turned the tables on them. What did you say? Nan Yifan asked almost subconsciously. Chu Liyue curled his lips, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. I say, Master Nan, you took advantage of the fact that we left the Yuntian Tower and only brought a few people to the Peach Blossom Dock to send people to kill us. After you failed, You encouraged the people of the Nan family to denounce us. How should we settle this debt? She deliberately slowed down her speech. Every word and sentence was crystal clear. Everyone's expression changed. Chu Liyue's words contained too much information. Nan Yifun's heart seemed to have been hammered by something. He immediately shouted out in a conditioned reflex. You're talking nonsense. Whether I'm talking nonsense or Patriarch Nan has ulterior motives. Everyone is here today. Won't we find out after an investigation? Chu Liyue rubbed her temples gently. There was a smile on her lips, but there was a hint of sarcasm and impatience on her face. She had to admit that Nan Yifun's series of actions really disgusted her. Not to mention what happened before. Just the fact that he chose to kill Nan Yi in order to save Nan Yuxing was not something a normal person could do. Later, he tacitly allowed Nan Yuxing to bring Luo Yan and the others to kill her, and Rong Xiu to wash away the guilt in his heart. After failing, he pushed all the blame to others. Chu Liyue was amazed. He actually had the cheek to bring so many people from the Nan family to the Peach Blossom Dock and say that he wanted to seek an explanation for the deaths of the Nan family elders for his son? She clapped her hands. Sini, bring Luo Yan and the others here. Yes. Sini bowed and turned to leave. Yi Wentao furrowed his brows and became vigilant. Sini had been following behind Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue previously. However, until he spoke, he was just standing there without any sense of presence, as if he was invisible. Even he didn't notice this man's existence just now. Was he Chu Liyue's subordinate? Sensing this gaze, Chu Liyue's eyes turned slightly. Yi Wentao had just retracted his gaze. Chu Liyue sized him up with interest. A person like Nan Yifun was nothing to worry about. In comparison, it seemed that family Yi was more difficult to deal with. Yi Wentao looked gentle and harmless on the surface, and was very elegant. However, how could someone who could reach his current position be a simple person? Not to mention, he had chosen to join forces with the Nan family. Chu Liyue's gaze then landed on the two people behind Yi Wentao and smiled playfully. There were two acquaintances on the family Yi side, Yi Wentao and Jun Jiuqing. She had long known that Yi Wentao came from a good family, but she never knew that he was from the family Yi. And Jun Jiuqing, from the looks of it, he could be considered a member of the family Yi now? Vice President, I haven't had the chance to properly greet you since we met last time. I didn't expect to see you here. Chu Liyue said with a hint of mockery and sarcasm in her words. They didn't come with good intentions. Yi Wentao didn't care about his face at all, and directly stood on the opposite side of them. Digression. 6 o'clock. It will take some time to write about the bridal chamber. Ahem, mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1936. Yi Wenzhuo was unmoved. When he decided to come with the family Yi, he had already thought about what he would face later. Chu Liyue was Nan Suhuai's beloved disciple. If he made things difficult for her, he would undoubtedly offend Nan Suhuai. It was even possible that he would lose his position as the vice dean because of this. But so what? He felt aggrieved as the vice dean of Lingxiao College. Even if he lost it, there was nothing to feel sorry about. When Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue got married, Nan Suhuai's actions were almost equivalent to confirming that the next dean of the college would be Chu Liyue. What else did he have to worry about? Therefore, in the end, he still chose to come as a member of the family Yi. Indeed, I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't expect you to be so promising. Yi Wenzhuo said sarcastically. From the looks of it, Peach Blossom Dock was really under the control of Chu Liyue, and Rong Xiu didn't interfere much. However, these things were complicated. No one could tell what was going on until the last moment. Chu Liyue nodded happily. Thank you for the compliment, Vice Dean. It seemed that she didn't hear the sarcasm in his words. Yi Wenzhuo choked, then snorted and waved his sleeves fiercely. He wanted to see how long Chu Liyue could laugh. Jun Jiuqing, who was standing at the side, didn't show any expression from beginning to end. When he saw the two of them holding hands, a dim light flashed in his eyes. There seemed to be some kind of inexplicable tacit understanding between them. When they looked at each other, they could easily understand each other's thoughts. It was as if there was a layer of invisible boundary that surrounded the two of them. No one was allowed to enter. Now that a strong enemy was here, and danger was in front of her, she still looked calm and composed. Her beautiful eyes and brows were relaxed. Every frown and smile seemed to have a unique charm. However, compared to before, she was more gentle and charming. Of course, it was only when she was looking at the person beside her that she would reveal her little girl demeanor. She was like a dusty pearl that had finally blossomed. Jun Joching looked away and clenched his hands in his sleeves. He lowered his eyes slightly to hide the ripples in his eyes. Patriarchy, may I know why you have brought people here today? Rong Xiu's gaze lingered on Jun Joching for a moment before he looked at Yi Wentao. Yi Wentao smiled. Don't misunderstand, Holy Son. We're here today to do business with you. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Oh, I don't know what business I can do with family Yi. Yi Wentao's expression remained the same as he smiled faintly. To be honest, we have our eyes on this Peach Blossom Cove. Chu Liyue's brows twitched. As long as the saint is willing to give up the Peach Blossom dock, you can name any conditions you want. His attitude was courteous, and his expression was warm and gentle. However, his words almost made Chu Liyue laugh out of anger. So this family Yi was here for the Peach Blossom Cove. He sounded generous, but why didn't he ask if she was willing? Previously, she had chatted with Rong Xiu, and said that after this, those who coveted the Peach Blossom Cove would take action. However, she did not expect that family Yi would be the first to make a move. Rong Xiu smiled faintly when he heard this. The Peach Blossom Cove belongs to you. If you want it, you should go to her. Yi Wentao was stunned for a moment. He had always thought that most of the rumors were false. Chu Liyue should not have the ability to take over the Peach Blossom Cove. Rong Xiu must have taken action in the end. Therefore, he directly told Rong Xiu what he said just now. However, he did not expect Rong Xiu to be so straightforward. The Peach Blossom Cove belonged to Chu Liyue. The decision on how to deal with the Peach Blossom Cove was in Chu Liyue's hands. Yi Wentao's heart was beating like a drum. He had some understanding of Rong Xiu. If he was really the one who took over the Peach Blossom Cove, he would have rejected his suggestion directly. However, he actually changed the topic to Chu Liyue. Was he trying to praise Chu Liyue in front of everyone? Or was the Peach Blossom Cove really taken over by Chu Liyue? Yi Wentao was not sure. In comparison, he was more afraid of Rong Xiu. As for Chu Liyue, he did not think much of him. However, if the rumors were true and the Peach Blossom Cove was taken over by Chu Liyue alone, then he would have to re-evaluate his judgment of her. However, Yi Wentao was not an ordinary person. After being rejected by Rong Xiu, he went along with the flow and looked at Chu Liyue with a smile. Sorry. What do you think, Your Highness? Impossible. Before Yi Wentao could finish his sentence, Chu Liyue cut him off. What kind of joke was this? She had spent so much time and effort to take over the Peach Blossom Cove. It was not easy to turn the Peach Blossom Cove into her territory. How could she give it up so easily? Yi Wentao paused for a moment. In fact, he had expected Chu Liyue's reaction and attitude. If it were anyone else, they would have rejected him as well. However, he was not in a hurry. Why are you in such a hurry to reject us, Your Highness? Perhaps our conditions can persuade you? Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes and smiled. Oh, then I'd like to hear what family Yi has in mind. The Peach Blossom Cove was vast and had abundant energy of heaven and earth. More importantly, it was directly connected to the Gate Realm, and could freely enter and exit the realm of divine ruins. Such a treasured land was a priceless treasure. What else in the world could be compared to it? On the other side, the Nan family members had different reactions when they heard this. That was right. How could they forget that the Peach Blossom Cove was also a priceless treasure? They were only thinking about revenge, and forgot about this important point. If they could take the Peach Blossom Cove, then some people were tempted. Some people started to look at Nan Yifan to see what he was thinking. However, at this moment, Nan Yifan's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Other than anger and resentment, nothing else could be seen. He did not seem to be interested in the Peach Blossom Cove. All his energy and attention was still focused on revenge. That was true. He was the one who lost his son and had no descendants. Naturally, he was the one who was upset. Although the others were angry, they could not compare to Nan Yifan. Some people were tempted, but they suppressed their thoughts unwillingly. Even if they could defeat Rong Xiao and Chu Luyue, how could they compete with Family Yi? Originally, the two families were on par. However, after the previous setback, the Nan family probably could not compete with Family Yi. Just the goddess alone. They had invited 10 of them this time. They were determined to get the Peach Blossom Cove. Hearing Chu Luyue's question, Yi Wentao seemed to smile. The lives of the Holy Sun, the princess, and the countless cultivators in the Peach Blossom Cove city. Is this enough to exchange for the Peach Blossom Cove? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1937. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room suddenly froze. A gust of coldness gushed out, and the temperature dropped to freezing point. The air seemed to have frozen, and the surroundings were so silent that it was almost suffocating. What he meant was that if Chu Luyue refused to give up the Peach Blossom Dock, the Family Yi would kill everyone in the Peach Blossom Dock. The smile on Chu Luyue's face gradually disappeared. Her eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, and it was bone-chillingly cold. Family Yi, are you threatening me? Yi Wentao shook his head. No. I'm very sincere in talking about this business with Princess Yu. His tone was so sincere, and so was his expression. Those who did not know him would really think that he was full of sincerity. Chu Luyue sized him up and laughed instead of being angry. It seems that Family Yi has a lot of confidence in yourself. Yi Wentao nodded slightly and said tactfully and straightforwardly. I never do things that I am not sure of. The people he brought with him were the most powerful people in the Family Yi. Together with the Nan family, it would be a piece of cake for them to deal with the Peach Blossom Dock. He knew that Rong Xiao was powerful, and he must have been prepared beforehand. But this time, since he had decided to make a move, he would not allow himself to fail. Otherwise, none of them would have a good ending. He looked steadily at Chu Luyue. What do you think of my offer, princess? Chu Luyue's lips curved slightly, and her eyes seemed to twinkle. Her red lips parted slightly, and spat out a few words to express her most sincere intentions. I am looking at you farting. Dead silence. No one expected Chu Luyue to throw out such a sentence. She was simply tearing off the other party's face and throwing it to the ground to trample on it. She did not give the other party any face at all. The Nan family was shocked. Chu Luyue is so unreasonable. The Family Yi was also shocked. What are you talking about? Even Yi Wentao, who would remain calm even if MT Tai collapsed in front of him. After hearing this sentence, his handsome and elegant face twisted for a moment. He came from an extremely good background, and his path had been smooth sailing. When had he ever been humiliated like this to his face? It was extremely unpleasant to hear. It was extremely humiliating. On the other hand, the guards of the Peach Blossom Dock who were standing at the side all revealed looks of admiration. Master Yu is indeed Master Yu. How domineering. This was the way to deal with such a shameless and high and mighty person. Yi Wentao took a deep breath, and finally regained his composure. He suppressed his anger and looked at Rong Xiao. Saint, I'm here to discuss this business with sincerity. Isn't Princess Consort going overboard with her actions? Rong Xiao's thin lips curled into a smile. I'm sorry, Yu has always been outspoken. There's nothing wrong with her except that she likes to speak the truth. Master Family Yi is magnanimous, so I'm sure you won't fuss over such a small matter. These words made Yi Wentao unable to say a single word. His face was a mix of red and white. How exciting! Chu Luyue once again gave her man a thumbs up in her heart. Impressive. Truly impressive. What did it mean to win without shedding a drop of blood? This was what it meant. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting Yi Wentao's pretentious manner into pieces. After losing face in front of so many people, it would be difficult for him to pick it up again. You! Yi Wentao held his breath, and had just spat out 2 words when he was interrupted. Master, they're here. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Sini had returned. Behind him were a few guards from the Yu residence, who were escorting Luo Yan and the other 3. Ever since Luo Yan gave his instructions, Chu Luiyue didn't make things difficult for them anymore. Instead, he let his subordinates take good care of them. This time, they even changed into clean new clothes. From the outside, apart from their pale faces and dispirited spirits, they didn't seem to be any different from ordinary people. However, everyone present was quite strong, and someone quickly saw the problem. Why are they so weak? And there doesn't seem to be any force fluctuations on their bodies. Someone in the Nan residence asked softly. Weak. It was easy to understand. It was most likely Chu Luiyue and the others who tortured them. However, it was really strange that they didn't have any force fluctuations on their bodies. Even if there was a barrier between them, they shouldn't be too far apart, so they should be able to sense it. Nan Yifan's heart sank, and he immediately shouted, Shang Guanyu, what did you do to them? Chu Luiyue said unhurriedly, What's the hurry, Master Nan? I just gave them some medicine so that they can stay here quietly. However, aren't they still here? As she spoke, she walked to Luo Yan's side. Luo Yan, Master Nan said that we killed Nan Yuxing. Do you have anything to say about this? Everyone's eyes were focused on Luo Yan. He slowly raised his head. Nan Yifan and him looked at each other for a moment. That cold and gloomy gaze made Nan Yifan feel a strong sense of uneasiness. Luo Yan opened his mouth, his voice was hoarse. I killed Nan Yuxing. Nan Yifan clenched his fists. Luo Yan, are you being threatened by them? Don't worry, we're here today to seek justice for you. Just tell the truth. Luo Yan just looked at him, his eyes cold and strange. I did kill Nan Yuxing. Many people saw it at that time. Nan Yifan, shouldn't you be the clearest about why I killed him? Digression, 7 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1938. His voice was cold and mechanical. Only when one looked carefully and saw the hatred in his eyes would one understand that his words were indeed from the bottom of his heart. Nan Yifan was stunned. Everyone in the Nan family was also stunned. Luo Yan actually admitted that he was the one who killed Nan Yuxing? What else did he say? Nan Yifan knew best why he did it? Countless doubtful and suspicious gazes fell on Nan Yifan. And in Nan Yifan's heart, stormy waves were set off. Luo Yan's words, could it be that he already knew? Huge worry and fear surged in his heart. He opened his mouth, but it was as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat. Chu Luiyue admired the changes in Nan Yifan's expression for a while before he said, Since everyone is here, it's better to lay things out on the table. Luo Yan, why don't you tell everyone in person why you came to Peach Blossom Dock this time? Nan Yifan's heart seemed to be clenched by something. Luo Yan, don't forget that you're from the Nan family. No matter how they coerce you, you can't betray the Nan family. He shouted sternly. Luo Yan seemed to have heard a joke as the corners of his mouth twitched. Nan Yifan, are you muddle-headed? My surname is Luo, not Nan. The corners of Nan Yifan's eyes twitched violently, and his entire body turned cold. Then he heard Luo Yan continue. Our purpose this time is very simple. To kill you. When we found out that you came to the Peach Blossom Dock without bringing anyone with you, we had this plan and came here directly. We originally wanted to get rid of you directly, but we didn't expect that we would be the ones who lost. Luo Yan's expression was indifferent, and his words were cold and clear. Everyone in the Nan family was already in an uproar. The version they heard was not like this. Who was telling the truth between Nan Yifan and Luo Yan? As for the reason why we want to kill you, it's naturally because of Yi. Not many people knew that Nan Yi had offended Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue in the Divine Ruins world. However, the Nan family and Family Yi were very well informed. As long as they were willing, it would not be difficult for them to find out. Moreover, on the day of Rong Xiao's wedding, Nan Yi had openly gone to the Yuntian Tower. Although he had been rejected, he had done it too openly. It was hard not to know. And Nan Yi's sudden death some time ago had caused a lot of speculation. In the beginning, just like Nan Yuxing and the others, I thought he had died in your hands. However, he later found out that this was not the case. At the mention of Nan Yi, Luo Yan's expression finally changed. Heartache, pity, regret, resentment. He took a deep breath. The one who really killed Yi was none other than Nan Yifan. Nan Yifan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He almost reflexively shouted, "Luo Yan, do you know what you're saying?" His emotions were abnormally agitated. His face was flushed red, but his lips were pale and trembling violently. Everyone from the Nan family was stunned for a moment. They didn't believe it either. Anyone could have killed Nan Yi, but not Nan Yifan. He was Nan Yi's biological father. "Luo Yan, are you confused? Second Miss is the apple of the family head's eye. He dotes on her too much. Why would he harm her?" "That's right. Even if you betrayed the Nan family and stood on their side, you should at least say that there's a possibility, right? Luo Yan, why do you have to do this?" Everyone from the Nan family found Luo Yan's words absurd and laughable, and they all criticized him. However, Luo Yan only sneered and stared at Nan Yifan. "That's right. I also wanted to guess that it was someone else. Unfortunately, your family head didn't give me the chance. Nan Yifan, why don't you say it yourself whether it's true or not? Tell me, how did you kill Yi and forcefully take her Yuan Meridian in order to help your good son recover his Yuan Meridian?" Luo Yan's words were full of hatred and resentment. And with these words, all the noise finally disappeared. The scene fell into dead silence again. The expressions of the people from the Nan family became subtle. Others didn't know, but they knew. Some time ago, there was indeed a problem with Nan Yuxing's body. Nan Yifan only said that he was injured and needed some time to recuperate. But there were actually many people who were secretly suspicious. Because the courtyard was very strictly guarded, Nan Yifan only allowed his most trusted celestial physician and his subordinates to go there. No one else was allowed to enter. Later Nan Yi died. Not long after that, Nan Yuxing's body recovered, and he even broke through. At first, they were only a little surprised, but they didn't think much of it. However, Luo Yan's words instantly tore apart that layer of concealment and revealed the truth before their eyes. After understanding the meaning behind this, the sound of people sucking in cold breaths rose and fell one after another. Didn't this mean that Nan Yi really died in Nan Yifan's hands? The family head dotes on Second Miss so much. How could it be? Someone muttered in disbelief. Someone else had a meaningful look on his face. No matter how good Second Miss is, how can she be more important than eldest young master? He's the most suitable heir to the family head position in this bloodline. All kinds of chaotic voices sounded. Everyone looked at Nan Yifan with eyes full of doubt. Nan Yifan didn't look back, but he also felt uneasy. His limbs seemed to be numb, and he almost couldn't feel anything. Only layers of bone-chilling coldness surged out from the deepest part of his body and swallowed him. "Yu." He wanted to speak and deny Luo Yan's words, but he only realized that his voice was trembling when he said it. Luo Yan hated him. He wanted to drag him into hell completely. He wanted him to never be able to make a comeback. That's right. He had always doted on Nan Yi. Now that he knew this, he naturally wouldn't let it go. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Nan Yifan's mind, but it also seemed to be blank. A crisp applause sounded. Everyone came back to their senses and realized that the person who was clapping was Chu Luyue. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Master Nan, I really couldn't tell that you had such a temperament and means. You were clearly the one who harmed your own children, but now you have the cheek to bite back, and even made so many people from the Nan family accompany you. I'm impressed, I'm really impressed. However, if Nan Yi and Nan Yuxing knew about this in the underworld, they would probably hate you for having a father like you, right?" Pfft. Nan Yifan's chest shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1939. He was so agitated that he vomited blood because of Chu Luyue's words. There was silence all around. The Nan family members were in disbelief. Even the family members looked at Nan Yifan differently. Could it be that what Chu Luyue said was true? Did Nan Yifan really do those things? If that was the case, then Nan Yifan's reputation would be ruined from now on. Not only would he lose his position as the head of the family, but he would also become a rat on the street, hated by everyone. Who would dare to work with someone who could do such a thing to his own child? Who would still treat him well? Finally, someone from the Nan family stood up and asked, "Head of the family, do you have anything to say?" Everyone's burning eyes fell on Nan Yifan. They needed an explanation. Nan Yifan was filled with hatred. When he learned that Luo Yan and the others were trapped, he felt a little uneasy. But he was not really worried that they would choose to betray him. These people were his confidants who had followed him for many years, and they were the people he trusted the most. Moreover, during this period, he was immersed in grief and resentment most of the time, and his mind had been in a tense state. His mind was full of revenge, and he had no extra energy and spirit to care about other things. Unexpectedly, Luo Yin chose to betray him right in front of him. In front of so many people, he revealed everything. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning in Nan Yifan's chest, and it was so hot that his eyes were dyed with a trace of scarlet. He slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked back. His cold and fierce eyes swept across the Nan family members like a sharp blade and stopped for a while on the person who spoke. That person's heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously took half a step back. Nan Yifan's eyes were too scary. "You are all important people in the Nan family. Do you need me to teach you who to believe and who not to believe?" Nan Yifan clenched his fists, and every word seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. He suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Luo Yan and the others. "These people have been trapped in Peach Blossom Dock for several days. Who knew what had happened during this period of time? You don't believe me, but you believe them?" A series of rhetorical questions shook the hearts of the Nan family members. Although what Luo Yan said seemed to be true, Nan Yifan's words were not without reason. Who knew if someone had done something behind the scenes? Nan Yuxing was already dead. Nan Yi was also dead. As for what the truth was, there were many different opinions, and it was impossible to investigate thoroughly. They were also hesitant about who they should believe. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. Of course, Nan Yifan wouldn't admit it. Once these things were proven to be true, he would be completely destroyed. Therefore, no matter what method he used, he would choose to quibble and push the blame to others. Nan Yifan continued, "If you still consider yourselves members of the Nan family, then today, follow me." Whoosh! Suddenly, a silver spear appeared in his hand. The spearhead was incomparably sharp, and the patterns on the body of the spear intertwined with each other. "I'd like to see how long you can defend yourselves." Before he finished speaking, his feet moved, and he charged straight for Chu Luiyue. Silver blue lightning swam under his feet, making crackling sounds. He was a god, and his strength was already strong. Now that he used his movement technique, his speed was naturally even faster. In almost the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the barrier. Soul-devouring silver dragon spear. Nan Yifan's aura surged, and a powerful pressure suddenly descended. Chi. A large number of barbs suddenly appeared on the silver spear. From afar, it looked like a piece of scale armor, and the scale armor was suffused with a purple-red light, cold and strange. It was obviously dipped in poison. In the blink of an eye, the spear had arrived. Everyone's hearts tightened. They didn't expect Nan Yifan to suddenly attack. Just as they were thinking about whether Chu Luiyue could withstand this attack, they were surprised to find that Chu Luiyue didn't move at all. She just stood there, her shoulders and back straight like a pine tree. A gentle breeze blew, and her skirt fluttered. Her long hair fluttered gently, and she raised her head slightly. She just stood there quietly, her expression calm and composed. It was as if she didn't care about Nan Yifan's attack at all. It wasn't just them. Nan Yifan also frowned because of her reaction. It was too strange. The distance between the two of them wasn't far, and he was already close to the barrier. Could it be that she was scared silly? Nan Yifan thought in his heart. But when he met Chu Luiyue's eyes, he realized that he was wrong. That pair of bright starry eyes was like a deep and calm pool, as if no matter what happened, it wouldn't cause the slightest ripple. Even the corners of her lips were slightly raised, as if she was smiling. Smiling? What was she smiling about? Nan Yifan couldn't understand. Chu Luiyue seemed to be hiding countless secrets that couldn't be understood no matter how hard he tried. Seeing him attack, She didn't seem surprised at all, and even looked like she was waiting to see a joke. Yes, that was the feeling. Nan Yifan's heart instantly burned with anger. Chu Liyue's appearance and attitude. Wasn't she waiting to see him make a fool of himself? But what right did she have to do that? He knew that Chu Liyue's strength was tyrannical, far surpassing that of ordinary high gods. But she was still a high god after all. He had broken through to high god several years ago. Could it be that he couldn't even take her down? Previously in the god-slaying mound, he was afraid of Rong Xiu, but now, he had nothing to be afraid of. So he didn't hesitate at all for this attack. But at this moment, a tyrannical and flexible force suddenly stopped Nan Yifan. Nan Yifan was stunned. Only then did he realize that what stopped him was none other than the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier. The barrier that used to be fragile and chaotic, and could be entered and exited at will, now seemed to have become an iron wall. He couldn't advance even half an inch. Nan Yifan's fatal attack was fiercely stabbed out, but it was silently stopped by the barrier. The two forces began to quietly and fiercely fight each other. Because of the energy fluctuations, circles of ripples seemed to have appeared on the barrier. Under the sunlight, it flickered with fine and dazzling lights, bright and beautiful. Nan Yifan was stunned. His soul-devouring silver dragon spear was a supreme treasure. It was almost indestructible. Yet now it was easily stopped by a spirit formation. Everyone, if you want to take my life, you must first have the ability to break into the Peach Blossom Cove, right? Chu Liyue spoke slowly with a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold and fierce. Her eyes slowly and firmly swept across the crowd. I know that in the world of divine ruins, there are many people who covet the Peach Blossom Cove. So today, I'll be frank with you. The Peach Blossom Cove is here. Whoever wants to take it, feel free to come. Whoever can take half an inch of the Peach Blossom Cove's territory from my hands, I will admit that he is capable. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1940. Her clear voice spread far and wide, landing clearly in everyone's ears. Many people were shocked. Chu Liyue was openly declaring war. Moreover, she was challenging all the aristocratic families in the entire Divine Ruins world. Did she know what she was saying? After all, Peach Blossom Dock had just been taken over by her. Even if it had excellent conditions in all aspects, it was impossible to prepare everything in such a short time. There were many people in Peach Blossom Dock, but they were all mixed up and had their own camps. Even if Chu Liyue had become the master of Peach Blossom Dock, how could she build up a powerful force that belonged to her in just a few days? Compared to the other aristocratic families that had been passed down for thousands of years, her force was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. She still dared to be so arrogant? They soon understood why Chu Liyue had such courage. Because in the next moment, she raised her hand. The girl's hand was slender and fair, soft and boneless. It did not look threatening at all. Then, she waved her hand gently, just a little. Whoosh! The enchantment of Peach Blossom Dock, which was faintly glowing, started to fluctuate violently in an instant. The sound of surging tides came from within. From this sound, it was not difficult to guess what kind of terrifying energy was contained in it. Nan Yifan's expression changed slightly. He had a bad feeling. His sixth sense, which had been honed by years of battle experience, told him that he needed to retreat immediately. But he hesitated for a moment. In front of so many people, wouldn't it be too embarrassing to take the initiative to retreat right after making a move? But it was this moment of hesitation. Boom! A terrifying surge of energy surged forth. A new round of even crazier strangulation began. Before Nan Yifan could react, he felt something tighten around his hand. He immediately looked over and realized that a translucent energy with a faint, gorgeous light had tightly bound his soul-devouring silver dragon spear. Nan Yifan knew that something was wrong and wanted to pull it back immediately. But he realized that he could not pull it back at all. Nan Yifan panicked. There was something wrong with this enchantment. However, just as he was filled with shock and suspicion, crack! The sound of something breaking could be heard. His heart shuddered as well. In the next moment, he saw a sharp barbed scale on the body of the spear shatter. Obviously, It had been forcefully crushed by the power of the barrier. Nan Yifun's heart was instantly filled with shock. The power of this barrier far exceeded his expectations. He finally realized that something was wrong. Seeing that the translucent power was still spreading along the body of the spear, heading straight for his face, Nan Yifun immediately let go of his hand, moved his feet, and quickly retreated. Crack. Almost as soon as he left, the sound of shattering rang out one after another. Inside and outside the barrier, countless pairs of eyes saw the shocking scene. Just like that, the soul-devouring silver dragon spear, which could be considered a top-notch divine artifact, was slowly being crushed by the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier. As the ripples on the barrier surged, the silver spear broke inch by inch, and was finally annihilated into ashes. If Nan Yifun had been a step slower, he would have been in danger. Peach Blossom Doc's enchantment. How could it be so powerful? Someone in the crowd murmured in shock. They did not know that the Peach Blossom Dock had been rebuilt after its destruction. Now, the enchantment was covered with the power of the god-destroying tribulation, so it was naturally not comparable to an ordinary enchantment. Swish! Chu Luiyue raised his sword with one hand. He pointed to the front. Everyone please. Digression. Beginning of spring. I hope everything will get better as soon as possible. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1941. The sharp edge of the sword flickered with a cold light under the sunlight. A strong fighting spirit erupted from Chu Luiyue's body. Although there was still a barrier between them, Family E and the Nan family members who were standing outside couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Was this aura really something that a high god could possess? Nan Yifun took a few steps back and barely managed to stabilize his body. Although he dodged in time and wasn't injured, it was obvious that he had lost the confrontation just now. Moreover, it was in front of so many people. A high god powerhouse was actually easily stopped by a high god, and even had his weapon taken away. It was simply a great humiliation. Nan Yifun stood there, feeling like he was in an extremely sorry state. He had never suffered such a loss in the hands of anyone whose cultivation was lower than his. He was shocked and angry, wishing that he could immediately rush over and kill Chu Luiyue. However, Nan Yifun was the head of the Nan family after all. He had been in a high position for many years. If he really didn't have a brain, he would have been pulled down long ago. How could he have come to this day? He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Previously, he had been stimulated by the deaths of Nan Yi and Nan Yuxing, and his emotions had been very unstable. Coupled with his lack of understanding of Chu Luiyue's strength, it led him to do so many stupid things under impulse. But now, Chu Luiyue had directly crushed the soul-devouring silver dragon spear and blocked his attack with little effort, which finally woke him up. It was obviously impossible for this to go on. Chu Luiyue's fighting strength was obviously far higher than he had expected. In other words, if he wanted to take down Peach Blossom Dock, he would have to pay a higher price. Nan Yifun's mind raced as he slowly exhaled. It didn't matter. The Nan family had sent 8 high gods this time, plus the 10 from Family E. Their fighting strength would be extremely strong. Chu Luiyue could stop him alone. But could he stop all of them? Since you have said so, then don't blame us for being impolite. After Nan Yifun finished speaking, he crossed his hands in front of him. Vigorous origin power gushed out of his body in an unending stream. A dazzling purple light quickly covered his entire body. Purple cloud armor. Soon, his entire body was covered by the purple scale armor. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes slightly. This aura was strangely familiar. Then, Nan Yifun moved his feet slightly, clenched his right hand into a fist, and punched out fiercely. Purple cloud fist. Break. Last time, he had used 70% of his strength. This time, he didn't hesitate to use his full strength. The fist wrapped in the purple cloud armor pierced through the air. The void trembled and collapsed one after another. A black spatial crack rapidly spread out. However, in the eyes of the people in Peach Blossom Dock, this scene was nothing special. They had already personally experienced the scene of heaven and earth collapsing. So why would they be afraid of this? It pales in comparison to a great one. The sword in Chu Liyue's hand suddenly slashed out. A silver light blade quickly flew out. Chi! In the blink of an eye, the light blade cut into the barrier. When the crowd saw this, they were all at a loss. What was Chu Liyue thinking? Was he planning to break the barrier by himself? However, in the next moment, everything that happened in front of them shocked them on the spot. After the light blade came into contact with the barrier, it didn't cut it open. Instead, like water, it quickly melted away. Then, layers of ripples appeared on the barrier. Poof! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the light blade rushed out of the barrier again. It went straight for Nan Yifan. Its appearance was too sudden. Everyone present didn't expect that Chu Liyue's attack could be sent out in such a manner. Moreover, the aura on the light blade didn't weaken at all. It seemed to have strengthened. Nan Yifan was also taken aback. He had already sensed the astonishing aura on it. However, at this time, there was no reason to retreat. He clenched his teeth and madly urged the power in his body, pouring all of it into his fist. Clang! A crisp sound of collision was heard. The light blade struck Nan Yifan's fist with incomparable precision. Because of the protection of the purple cloud armor, Nan Yifan wasn't directly injured by the light blade. However, his situation wasn't much better. The impact of the light blade was too strong, and it directly shook his entire palm until it was numb. The power of both sides began to fiercely clash, devouring each other. At a certain moment, Nan Yifan turned his wrist. Whoosh! An ear-piercing scraping sound was heard, and sparks flew everywhere. Nan Yifan took a step to the side, quickly bypassed this power, and continued to move forward. His speed was extremely fast. Almost in an instant, he came in front of the barrier again. He changed his fist into a claw. Sharp purple scales covered his fingertips, and they were extremely sharp. He directly stretched out his hand, intending to tear the barrier apart by force. However, at this moment, he suddenly heard a sharp whistle in his ear. He turned around to look, and saw that the light blade that he had just avoided had also changed direction at this moment, and was flying towards him at lightning speed. Nan Yifan was shocked. It could be like this. However, he didn't know that Chu Liyue had personally refined Scarlet Cloud Sword Soul. So naturally, it could do whatever it wanted. If one attack didn't work, it would come again. Nan Yifan didn't have time to think about tearing the barrier apart anymore, and hurriedly dodged. Although his speed was very fast, the light blade came too suddenly. He couldn't completely avoid it. The light blade flashed quickly, and instantly left a bloody mark on his left shoulder. Excruciating pain instantly assaulted him. Nan Yifan subconsciously looked at the wound on his shoulder. An inch-long scar could be seen on it. Flesh and blood rolled. Blood gushed out, and soon, his clothes were dyed red. Nan Yifan held it tightly, and finally couldn't help but shout, "What are you all still standing there for?" Only then did the people of the Nan family wake up from their dream, and they all moved out. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. More than a dozen experts of the Nan family stood in the air one by one, facing Chu Liyue, who was standing at the gate. Just as they were about to pursue, the light blade had already flown back and quietly merged into the barrier. The Nan family members missed. Nan Yifan's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Chu Liyue was simply playing with them. The people of the family were watching from the side. Wentao had one hand behind his back, looking calm, as if he didn't intend to make a move. Many people of the family looked at each other. They were not stupid. It was true that the family head came here for Peach Blossom Dock, but obviously, he had some connection with the Nan family. Thinking back to when Nan Yifan suddenly came to the family what the two talked about at that time, it was almost self-evident. However, the Nan family had already made a move. Were they going to keep watching? Jun Jiuqing suddenly took half a step forward and said, "Family head, I think this time, we'd better end the battle quickly." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1942. Wentao turned around and glanced at him. "Oh, Peach Blossom Dock may not be a problem now, but they have many backers. The situation will only be more difficult to deal with." Jun Jiuqing said concisely. Iwenzhua couldn't help but nod and agree. That's right. Big brother. Not to mention the Yuntian Tower. Shengguanyu alone is difficult to deal with. The mythical beast she contracted is the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Just Chu Luiyue alone wasn't enough to scare them. But the key was that she did have an extremely powerful backer. If it was delayed until then, I'm afraid. Yi Wentao pondered for a moment. It was not that he had not considered this problem. From the moment he agreed to join forces with Nan Yifan, he had already anticipated countless possibilities and the various situations he would face. Naturally, this included these. However, since he had already made this choice, it proved that he had thought it through very clearly. He knew which was more important. Let's wait a little longer, he said. Seeing that he was still so calm, Iwenzhua and the others became anxious. Wait, what were they waiting for? At this time, wasn't the best choice to attack Peach Blossom Dock as soon as possible? However, no matter how everyone reacted, Yi Wentao's expression and attitude remained the same. Seeing him like this, no one said anything else. In the family Yi, almost no one had ever disobeyed his words. It was the same at this time. Yi Wenzhua frowned and wanted to persuade him again. But in the end, he chose to give up and sighed helplessly. He couldn't understand what his big brother was thinking. What was there to see if the Nan family and Chu Luiyue were fighting? Jun Jiuqing glanced at Yi Wentao and found that his gaze fell on Chu Luiyue. He seemed to be focused. He suddenly thought of something and followed Yi Wentao's gaze. What was he looking at? Or was he waiting for something? Everyone from the Nan family moved out and began to try to break the enchantment of the Peach Blossom Dock. For a time, all kinds of colors intertwined. The rumbling continued without end. However, no matter how they tried, the barrier remained as stable as ever. Apart from a few ripples caused by the impact of the energy, there wasn't even a single crack on it. Everyone's expression gradually turned ugly. Those who had been criticizing Nan Yifan in their hearts at the beginning finally understood why he had returned in defeat the previous 2 times he had acted. There was something wrong with this barrier. The Nan family could be considered the top aristocratic family in the Divine Ruins. But even they themselves did not dare to say that their barrier was stronger than the one in front of them. Furthermore, it was clear that this barrier was controlled by Chu Luiyue alone. She could control the barrier as she pleased. No wonder it was rumored that Peach Blossom Dock is now Shengguanyu's territory. This barrier belonged to her and was under her control. Wasn't this the same as holding the entire Peach Blossom Dock in her hands? Was there anything she couldn't do? That's really strange. She's just a supreme deity. How did she do all this? I heard that there was a riot in Peach Blossom Dock, and it caused a big commotion. Since then it has been like this. I wonder what Shengguanyu did at that time. Everyone was puzzled. They were really curious. If we can't break this barrier, are we going to waste our time like this? That would be too embarrassing. At this moment, the sound of something being torn apart was suddenly heard. Whoosh! Everyone looked over, only to see that Nan Yifan had arrived in front of the enchantment once again. He forcefully tore open the barrier with one hand and reached inside. Digression. The computer was down for a while. Let's read more first. 7 o'clock. I'll write down what I owe in a small notebook. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1943. Nan Yifan was holding a short blade in his hand. The short blade was only as long as an adult's palm. It was purple in color and had a cold luster. It was extremely sharp. Almost silently, the tough enchantment was cut open. Nan Yifan was overjoyed when he saw this. He only wanted to give it a try, but he didn't expect to succeed. The opportunity couldn't be missed. Nan Yifan immediately mobilized more power and slashed fiercely. That crack was instantly lengthened. Without any hesitation, he entered in a flash. Hurry up! Everyone from the Nan family was also very excited when they saw this. They hurriedly rushed over, intending to rush in with Nan Yusheng. However, just as Nan Yifan entered the barrier, that long crack began to recover at an astonishing speed. It gathered together again. Ripples of light rippled, looking no different from the beginning. The Nan family members who wanted to follow in were immediately blocked outside, and were given the cold shoulder. The few people who rushed in front tried to open the barrier again, but it was in vain. Nan Yifan heard the commotion, and turned back to take a look. When he saw that the barrier had returned to normal in the blink of an eye, his eyelids twitched fiercely. A strong sense of uneasiness surged in his heart. Nan family head is really powerful, to be able to break my Peach Blossom Cove's barrier so easily. Chu Liyue's smiling voice sounded. Nan Yifan suddenly realized something, and his heart sank. Oh no, he fell into a trap. He broke into this barrier alone, which was tantamount to a sheep entering a tiger's den. You, cunning. Nan Yifan was enraged. Chu Liyue was still smiling. You flatter me. Compared to Nan family head's temperament and methods, I'm still lacking. These words were mocking him for killing Nan Yi for Nan Yuxing. Nan Yifan's chest felt like it had been hammered by something, and he couldn't breathe. He stabbed with a backhand. Ripples appeared on the barrier, but it wasn't cut open like before. She did it on purpose before. Nan Yifan's heart was filled with hatred. He didn't expect that Chu Liyue would still be able to use such a sinister move at this time. Seeing that the barrier couldn't be opened, Nan Yifan's mind raced, and he quickly made a decision. Since I'm already here, I might as well fight them to the death. Today, even if he had to pay with his life, he would absolutely not let these people have an easy time. Nan Yifan's gaze slowly swept over Luo Yen and the others, full of resentment. These 4 people had all betrayed the Nan family. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have brought them along. If that was the case, Yuxing might not have died. Nan Yifan's heart was filled with regret and anger. Finally, his gaze fell on Chu Liyue. The culprit behind all of this was her. If looks could kill, Chu Liyue would have been riddled with holes by now. However, she had been trained over the years, so she didn't take Nan Yifan's reaction seriously. Zhang Guanyu, you do have some skills. However, if you think that you can look down on everyone, and be the best in the world, just because of these, you are too naive. Chu Liyue explained sincerely. Patriarch Nan, you misunderstood me. I'm not an arrogant person, I don't think you're worthy of my attention. What's there to say to an enemy? If she didn't kill them, they would kill her. She would never hesitate to make such a choice. Nan Yifan gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He knew it. He shouldn't have said so much to Chu Liyue. Otherwise, in the end, he would probably die from anger before anything could happen. Arrogant to the extreme. Nan Yifan scolded sternly. If you really have the guts, fight with me. If you win, you can kill me or cut me up as you wish. If you lose, Patriarch Nan, have you been too sad about the deaths of your children that your mind has become muddled? Chu Liyue interrupted him, and asked curiously. You came to me to die, but you want me to fight with you alone? Why would I agree to such a request of yours? In this situation, Nan Yifan was doomed. That was why he said those words in a moment of desperation. But Chu Liyue was not stupid. Besides, you're a god, and you said those words to me, a superior god. Patriarch Nan, even if you don't feel embarrassed, I feel ashamed for you. Chu Liyue said with a faint smile. Nan Yifan's face turned red and white. He was really in a difficult situation now. Go back. The boundary couldn't be opened. Go forward. There were so many people there. Even if he was a god, he was no match for them. He was sweating profusely, and his body was cold. Rong Xiao, who had been watching from the side, suddenly spoke. Patriarch Family E, Patriarch Nan has fallen into such a situation. Are you still not going to do anything? This sentence was as cold and indifferent as usual, but it instantly silenced everyone inside and outside the boundary. Almost everyone subconsciously looked at Yi Wentao. In fact, at this time, who couldn't see his purpose of coming here? Now that Nan Yifan couldn't even protect himself, he still didn't do anything. Could it be that he was just going to watch Nan Yifan throw his life away? Yi Wentao heard this, and turned his eyes slightly. He and Rong Xiao looked at each other for a moment. That pair of eyes was like a calm pool of water, soaked with a bit of coldness that made people feel cold. Yi Wentao's heart moved. He was still afraid of Rong Xiao. However, at this moment, Nan Yifan suddenly rushed toward Chu Liyue. He waved his hand, and the short blade instantly flew out. A piercing pain hit him in the face. Chu Liyue's heart moved, and the armillary shield appeared in front of him. Yuan Tao's pupils suddenly shrank. Digression, today's update is overdue. Facing the wall to reflect on one's mistakes. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1945. However, at this moment, a green figure suddenly appeared in front of Chu Liyue. At the same time, that person waved his sleeve. A palm-sized transparent jade bangle flew out from his hand. The next moment, everyone saw that the short blade that Nan Yifan threw out actually changed direction inexplicably and flew towards the transparent jade bangle. The closer it got, the slower its speed became, as if it had fallen into an invisible swamp. Ding! That short blade hit the inner edge of the transparent jade bangle, making a faint crisp sound, then completely stopped. Nan Yifan was shocked. When he threw this short blade, he used all his strength. Even if it couldn't kill Chu Liyue, logically speaking, it should be able to leave a wound on her body. One must know that this short blade was no ordinary item. Even if Chu Liyue had some ability, it would be very difficult for her to block it. In the end, not only did this thing not injure Chu Liyue, but it was also easily dealt with by another person. At the same time, a tyrannical pressure swept over. Nan Yifan was forced to stop. He immediately looked at the person who attacked, his brows tightly knitted. Sini. He remembered this person. This was Chu Liyue's subordinate. From beginning to end, he had been following Chu Liyue. Only when he went to escort Luo Yan and the others, he left for a moment. However, from these matters, it wasn't hard to see that he should be Chu Liyue's right-hand man. And his status here wasn't low. It was just that, how could he be so strong? Nan Yifan's attention had always been on Chu Liyue and Rong Xiao. From beginning to end, he didn't even look at Sin Yi. Until now when Sin Yi attacked. How could an ordinary person block his attack so easily? Nan Yifan began to carefully examine Sin Yi. However, Sin Yi didn't seem to care about this. With a flick of his wrist, he put away the transparent jade bangle. Let me see that short blade, Chu Liyue said. Sin Yi made a sound of agreement, handing over the dagger with both hands. Chu Liyue carefully examined the purple dagger in his hand. After a while, he revealed a meaningful smile. Patriarch Nan is really capable. You can even use the dragon scales of the great phoenix dragon race to make a weapon? No wonder when Nan Yifan took out this thing, she felt that it was somewhat familiar. This dagger was made from the dragon scales of the great phoenix dragon race. However, he didn't know what method Nan Yifan had used to get his hands on this thing. Nan Yifan's expression was cold. It has nothing to do with you. Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows and played with the dagger. You intended to use this thing to harm my life. How is it unrelated to me? Besides, furthermore, this dragon scale was no ordinary dragon scale. It was hard to say what other secrets were hidden here. However, Chu Liyue did not say these words out loud. Nan Yifan didn't intend to talk to Chu Liyue anymore. His expression changed. After a short pause, he attacked again. From the looks of it, he was determined to kill Chu Liyue. Sin Yi heard the commotion behind him and cupped his fists. There's no need to trouble Master to do such a small thing. Chu Liyue thought for a while and nodded. All right. I haven't seen you fight in a long time. At this point, she suddenly turned around. A youth was standing at the city gate, staring at them. Chu Liyue waved. 13, come here. She had sensed 13's arrival just now. However, he was very sensible and knew that the situation was complicated. He didn't go forward and just stood inside to watch. Hearing Chu Liyue's words, 13's eyes lit up and he immediately ran over. He didn't think about danger or anything. Master and Big Brother were both here. What was there to worry about? Master. 13 came over. He was still a little confused. He didn't know why Chu Liyue had asked him to come over. Chu Liyue raised her chin and gestured for him to stand beside the guards at the city gate. All right, just stand there. 13 walked over obediently and stood still. It's rare for your big brother to fight. It's a rare opportunity. You have to watch carefully, Chu Liyue said with a smile. 13 was delighted and quickly nodded. Yes. Chu Luiyue nodded in relief. This child was teachable. Besides, she also wanted to see how strong Cini was now. On one hand, she could teach 13. On the other hand, she could solve the doubts in her heart. Finally, she could make Nan Yifan suffer a little. Why not kill several birds with one stone? Everyone was at a loss at first. Then they were shocked. At this time, Chu Luiyue still had the time to think about this? Nan Yifan was also about to go crazy. The veins on his forehead were throbbing wildly. He only felt that he had been greatly humiliated. What did Chu Luiyue mean by this? She didn't like him? She didn't even make a move herself, and only sent one of her subordinates. There seemed to be a flame burning wildly between his chest and abdomen. Nan Yifan instantly sped up again. Sun Yi turned around and looked at the rapidly approaching Nan Yifan. Then he moved his feet and sprinted forward. From the looks of it, he was planning to fight Nan Yifan head-on. Most of the onlookers had complicated expressions. Chu Luiyue was too arrogant, and her subordinate had the same temperament as her. Who was Nan Yifan? The head of the Nan family. He was a top expert who had broken through to the god level decades ago. This Cini looked to be in his 20s and was very young. Even if he had some strength, how could he be compared to Nan Yifan, who had combat experience? This was simply courting death. Nan Yifan quickly mobilized the power in his body. In fact, after experiencing those things before, he didn't dare to let his guard down anymore. This Sun Yi could take his move so easily, which proved that he definitely had some strength. At this moment he couldn't slack off at all. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to surge toward Nan Yifan. The aura on his body also became stronger. Sun Yi's long, narrow, and indifferent eyes narrowed slightly. But compared to Nan Yifan, there was almost no movement on his side. The distance between the two was rapidly shrinking. Nan Yifan suddenly stretched out a finger. A clear sound that seemed to come from the depths of the underworld came from afar. Underworld finger. His index finger had unknowingly turned a dark purple color, and a mysterious pattern vaguely appeared. At the same time, the Nan family totem flashed between his eyebrows. Sun Yi's expression didn't change as he directly punched out. Flowing wind fist. His fist was covered with a layer of green light that flowed slowly like water. Under the sunlight, it even sparkled and sparkled. His movements were swift and unrestrained like a gentle breeze, and it revealed an indescribable feeling of freedom. Then the two of them clashed. Boom! The power of both sides fiercely collided. Violent and unbridled energy quickly spread out in all directions. A layer of intertwined green and purple light exploded, instantly enveloping the two of them. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1946. Almost everyone's gaze landed on the two of them, eagerly waiting for the outcome. However, there was one person whose attention was not on them. That person was Yi Wentao. After seeing Chu Luiyue summon the Armillary Heaven Shield, his heart was in his mouth, waiting for her to make a move. However, he did not expect that Chu Luiyue would not make a move. Instead, Sun Yi appeared out of nowhere and went against Nan Yifan. This made Yi Wentao's mood very bad. However, his expression did not change at all, and he continued to watch with an indifferent expression. Sheng Guanyu's subordinate is not ordinary. He suddenly said. Of all the times to make a move, he chose to make a move now. Moreover, based on his previous observation, this Sun Yi's strength should not be underestimated. Yi Wentao frowned. I heard that Sheng Guanyu brought him back from outside the Divine Ruins world. I didn't know that she had such a person by her side. Yi Wentao's eyesight was not weak. He had clearly seen how Sun Yi had received Nan Yifan's attack. He was certain that Sun Yi's strength was definitely not to be underestimated. However, the more it was so, the more sullen Yi Wentao felt. Chu Luiyue was really too strange. Not only was she always stronger than everyone expected, but even the people she brought with her kept showing up. Every time everyone thought that they knew her well enough, she would always do something even more shocking and reveal more trump cards. Who knew that this time? Suddenly, a silhouette flew out from the intertwined ball of fire. Bang! His body fell heavily to the ground. There was a muffled sound. Everyone hurriedly looked over. When they saw that face clearly, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The person who was knocked to the ground was actually Nan Yifan. At this moment he was lying on the ground, his face pale, and he kept vomiting blood. As for his index finger, it had actually been broken off. At this moment, it was drooping at a strange angle, dripping with blood. He looked like he was in a very sorry state. Everyone was stunned, and they fell into deathly silence in unison. He originally thought that Nan Yifan would win for sure. Who knew that in just one round, he would be defeated? Immediately after, a green figure flew out from the ball of fire. Countless gazes looked over, yet they discovered that Sun Yi, who had similarly experienced an intense battle, was actually not stained by the slightest bit of blood. He floated in midair, and his green clothes were upright. The space between his brows was indifferent and cold, yet it revealed an indescribable icy cold noble aura. He looked down at Nan Yifan from above. Admit defeat? No one expected that the one to say this would actually beat Sun Yi. He was just one of Chu Liyue's subordinates. If even he was so powerful, then Chu Liyue. Nan Yifan struggled to stand up, coughing incessantly. Hearing Sun Yi's words, he spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. How high and mighty were these 3 words? It was almost like a few resounding slaps on his face. Nan Yifan endured the pain coming from all over his body and looked up. A cold smile suddenly appeared on his face. Admit defeat? Dream on. As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly bit the tip of his tongue. The purple short blade in Chu Liyue's hand suddenly cracked. Crack. Chu Liyue quickly looked down. A dragon's roar suddenly came from within. Almost at the same time, the void beside Nan Yifan shook violently. A figure walked out from within. Nan family head, is there something you need from me? Nan Yifan swallowed a mouthful of blood and said word by word. Elder Fushan, you have to help me this time. Digression. It's time to compare whose backer is more powerful. Come at 6. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1947. Looking at Nan Yifan's miserable appearance, Miao Fushan frowned. What happened to Patriarch Nan? According to his identity, he shouldn't have been reduced to such a state. Moreover, to be able to force Nan Yifan to use the dragon scale and summon him here, it must have been a critical moment. As Miao Fushan asked, he quickly sized up everything around him. At first glance, he saw Chu Liyue, who was holding the broken dragon scale in his hand. Then he was slightly startled. This situation doesn't seem right no matter what. Nan Yifan's next words immediately confirmed his guess. Elder Fushan, the matter is like this. Shangguan Yu and Rong Xiu killed my son and daughter, as well as several patriarchs of the Nan family. I originally wanted to lead people to seek an explanation, but I didn't expect them to be so cunning. They even bewitched the patriarchs of the Nan family who were previously detained, and made them pour all the dirty water on me. Elder Fushan, all these years, I have never dared to disturb you. But this time, I really have no choice. Chu Liyue was amazed. What was called inverting black and white? What was called a glib tongue? The evidence was conclusive, but he could still say such words. He was really not an ordinary person. Chu Liyue began to understand how he could sit on the patriarch's seat for so long. As Miao Fushan listened, the expression on his face became more and more subtle. Only when Nan Yifan finished speaking did he nod his head. Then he took a few steps forward. Everyone looked over with different expressions on their faces. In the entire Divine Ruins world, there was only one Elder Fushan, the Great Phoenix Dragon Clan's elder Miao Fushan. This was a well-known figure. It was rumored that his seniority was extremely high, and his position in the Great Phoenix Dragon Clan was very honorable. Even the patriarch would respect him. For Nan Yifan to be able to invite him, he was indeed a great backer. Even the people of the Nan family were shocked and at a loss when they saw this situation. They never knew that Nan Yifan had a relationship with Miao Fushan. With this person, even if Chu Liyue's contracted magical beast was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, he should still be slightly inferior, right? Thinking of this, many people's eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. Nan Yifan wiped the bloodstain from the corner of his mouth and looked at Chu Luiyue with even more coldness and complacency. However, Miao Fushan's next action shocked everyone. He cupped his fists and bowed to Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue. "Saint Princess Consort, long time no see. How have you been?" His attitude was extremely courteous, and there was even a hint of familiarity. It was as if he was meeting an acquaintance. Nan Yifan's smile froze on his face. He looked at Miao Fushan in disbelief. He had invited him here to deal with Chu Luiyue and the others. But what was with this reaction? Rong Xiao nodded and raised his thin lips. "It's been a while since we last met. Elder Fushan is even more spirited than before." Chu Luiyue's eyes curved up. "Yes, it seems that Elder Fushan has been quite happy during this period of time." Miao Fushan waved his hand and smiled bitterly. "Don't make fun of this old man, you two. Some time ago, I was busy with the clan's affairs and couldn't get away. This old man couldn't even personally attend your wedding. I hope you two can forgive me." Mao Zhen naturally had to clean up Mao Yang's henchmen in the clan. Therefore, the entire Great Phoenix Dragon clan was quite shaken during this period of time. He had just calmed down when Nan Yifan invited him over again. Rong Xiao smiled. "Elder Fushan is too polite. You are an elder. I should have taken you back to Divine Dragon Island, but I didn't expect to see you here before I could go back." While the three of them were talking, the onlookers were all stunned. Why did it seem like Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue had a better relationship with Miao Fushan? The more Nan Yifan watched, the more panicked he became. He faintly felt that he seemed to have missed something important. The entire Divine Ruins world knew that Rong Xiao and Nan Yifan had dealings with the Great Phoenix Dragon clan. After all, Patriarch Mao Zhen had personally gone to congratulate them on their wedding. But Nan Yifan had always thought that they were at most acquaintances and were far from close. After all, the Great Phoenix Dragon clan had always been arrogant and rarely had any dealings with the human race. But now, yes, I didn't expect Elder Fushan to be familiar with Patriarch Nan. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Miao Fushan sighed in his heart. It's a long story. Many years ago, this old man had the chance to meet the Nan family head. At that time, I was in a dangerous situation and Patriarch Nan helped me out. Therefore, I left behind a dragon scale as a token and promised that if Patriarch Nan needs any help in the future, he can just shatter this dragon scale. In other words, there was only one chance like this. But this time, it was enough to make many envious and jealous. After all, this was Miao Fushan. It was difficult for many people to see him, let alone others. But Nan Yifan could ask for his help. Even if it was thousands of miles away, Miao Fushan would immediately rush over. The gap between them wasn't small at all. Nan Yifan knew how precious this opportunity was, so he had cherished it all these years and had never used it. Until this time, when he was forced into a corner and had no way out, he finally used this trump card. But now, it seemed that the development of the matter had deviated from the direction he had expected. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and looked at Rong Xiao. No wonder, logically speaking, a person like Miao Fushan would not have any contact with Nan Yifan. It turned out that there was such a reason. I just didn't expect to meet the two of you this time. Miao Fushan also did not expect to face such an awkward situation. Chu Luiyue asked with a smile. Then, Elder Fushan, do you plan to help Patriarch Nan? This question was the question in everyone's mind. For a moment, there was silence inside and outside the field. Everyone was waiting for Miao Fushan's answer. His choice, to a large extent, would determine the direction of today's matter. Miao Fushan smiled helplessly. Princess, don't tease me. I don't care about others but the two of you. I can't beat you. If the Patriarch were to find out about this, he would definitely be furious. This sentence was a clear indication of his attitude. Nan Yifan suddenly became anxious and hurriedly took a few steps forward. Elder Fushan, what do you mean by this? He was the one who invited him here first, and it was clearly an agreement made many years ago. But in the end, Miao Fushan was still standing opposite those people. Miao Fushan stroked his beard helplessly. Patriarch Nan, you've really made things difficult for me this time. If it was any other matter, I would naturally be duty-bound, but this time, I really can't do it. Nan Yifan wanted to explain, but he continued. Princess is already half a family member of the Great Phoenix Dragon clan. How can you beat her? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1948. Each and every word echoed clearly in everyone's ears. It was like a thunderclap. Everyone was stunned on the spot, unable to regain their senses for a long time. They almost thought that they had misheard. Half a family, half a family. Who exactly was Chu Luiyue? What kind of ability did he have to make Miao Fushan say such words? Nan Yifan was completely dumbfounded. He looked at Miao Fushan with a shocked expression. He opened his mouth, but the thousands of words in his throat could not come out. Miao Fushan said, "This old man does owe Nan family head a favor, but how can I beat up my own family for an outsider? Nan family head, don't you think so?" If Miao Fushan's previous words were tactful, then this sentence completely cut off the last trace of hope in Nan Yifan's heart. Family, outsider. It was clear who was close and who was distant. This time, this old man has let Nan family head down. So if Nan family head needs any help in the future, just ask, and this old man will do his best to help. But this time, please forgive this old man, I really can't help. Miao Fushan said. As compensation, the previous one help will be changed to 2. What do you think, Nan family head? What do you think? He had already made his decision, so why was he still asking for his opinion? Nan Yifan sneered in his heart. Would Miao Fushan take back his words if he said no? More importantly, if Miao Fushan did not help, then he, Nan Yifan, might not even be able to live past today. Even if he had 2, 3, or even more opportunities, what was the use? Ridiculous. At this moment, Nan Yifan's limbs were cold, but his chest was boiling hot, as if something was rushing back and forth in his lungs, and was about to burst out. A warm, sweet, and fishy taste suddenly surged up his throat. He forced it down. There had never been a moment like this where he felt like a clown. Miao Fushan's words were like a slap to his face, and it was burning with pain. At this time, the people standing outside the barrier were not any better than Nan Yifan. Miao Fushan said, Chu Luiyue was a member of the Great Phoenix Dragon clan. She was a human. More importantly, her contracted mythological beast was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. It might make sense if she was half a member of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. But as for the Great Phoenix Dragon, in the entire Divine Ruins world, who didn't know that the relationship between these 2 primordial Divine Beast clans had always been very subtle? On the surface, everyone seemed to be minding their own business, but in reality, they were all openly and secretly competing against each other. The Great Phoenix Dragon actually treated Chu Luiyue as one of its own. Did they even consider the existence of the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix? Moreover, why hadn't they heard anything about such a big thing before? Even Yi Wentao, who had always been calm, frowned when he heard this. Yi Wentao had been secretly paying attention to these 2 primordial Divine Beast clans, but he hadn't heard anything about them. Why would Chu Luiyue have such a close relationship with them out of the blue? What was more troublesome was that Miao Fushan's status was noble, and his attitude basically represented the attitude of the entire Great Phoenix Dragon clan. If the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix and the Great Phoenix Dragon came to support at the same time, then at that time, it would be difficult to handle. Yi Wentao slowly clenched his fists. Chu Luiyue was actually a little surprised that Miao Fushan would say such a thing directly. Thinking about it carefully, it was probably because of Mao Zhen's attitude. Because of Zichen, she was indeed close to the Great Phoenix Dragon clan. However, it was very rare for Miao Fushan to be willing to say such a thing. One could imagine that this sentence would definitely spread throughout the entire Divine Ruins world. It could be said that they were standing behind her and supporting her openly. To the Great Phoenix Dragon race, this was indeed an extremely important decision. Chu Luiyue never thought that others should help her. Therefore, she was actually very grateful that Miao Fushan was willing to do this. Thank you, Elder Fushan. She sighed softly. Actually, What Patriarch Nan said earlier was not true. Following that, she briefly recounted the events that had transpired earlier. Originally, she didn't want to say much, but Miao Fushan's attitude surprised and made her very grateful. Therefore, she felt that she should tell the truth. As for who Miao Fushan believed, it was up to him. The more Miao Fushan listened, the tighter his frown became. By the end, his face was ashen. He suddenly turned around and stared at Nan Yifan. Patriarch Nan, is this all true? A trace of panic flashed in Nan Yifan's eyes, but he still said stubbornly, "Since Elder Fushan has chosen to stand on their side, why ask me this?" He put on a look of contempt and mockery, as if Miao Fushan was going back on his word. But who was Miao Fushan? Nan Yifan's disguise was completely useless in front of him. With just a few more glances, Miao Fushan had already guessed his thoughts. His expression turned cold. It was no problem for Nan Yifan to ask him for help. It was also no problem for Nan Yifan to be the one in the wrong. But he couldn't tolerate Nan Yifan lying. Nan Yifan felt guilty under Miao Fushan's gaze, and subconsciously looked away. After a while, Miao Fushan said indifferently, "Patriarch Nan, since you helped me before, I won't pursue today's deceit. But from now on, between you and me, it's written off. Patriarch Nan, you'd better pray for yourself." With that, he flicked his sleeves fiercely, and turned to walk in the direction of Chu Luiyue and the others. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. "Elder Fushan, it's a great thing that the princess consort can take down Peach Blossom Dock." A smile appeared on Miao Fushan's face. This matter had been spreading like wildfire in the Divine Ruins world recently, so he naturally heard about it too. He had long thought that the other families of the human race might take action, but he didn't expect that these two families would be the first to take action. And it just so happened that he was summoned here. Since it was such a coincidence, he might as well stay here and help. Since it's a wonderful thing, I naturally won't allow others to ruin it. Although this old man is an old bag of bones, but this little bit of help can still be of help. I hope the Holy Sun and Princess Consort won't mind. He said that he wouldn't do anything to Nan Yifan, but he didn't say that he would do the same to others. After weighing the two, he naturally had to help Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue was also quite surprised. "What are you talking about, Elder Fushan? We should be thanking you." Although she had her own plan, Miao Fushan's willingness to help greatly increased their chances of winning. Nan Yifan almost fainted when he heard this. Digression. Come back at 7 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1949. After a long time, not only did they not manage to invite any helpers, they even had one more enemy. And it was an extremely powerful one. Nan Yifan felt that everything seemed to be a ghost when it came to Chu Luiyue. He had hidden this trump card for many years, and now that he had finally used it, it was ruined by Chu Luiyue with just a few words. He could not understand how Chu Luiyue managed to be on good terms with two ancient divine beast clans at the same time. Moreover, it was not just a normal relationship, but a close relationship that allowed them to help anytime and anywhere. Nan Yifan was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would never have invited Miao Fushan over. But now it was too late to say anything. Miao Fushan's appearance and declaration had caused a great change in the situation. If they had dared to give it their all before, they were now somewhat hesitant. The great phoenix dragon was a divine beast. Originally, Chu Luiyue had already contracted the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, which was already troublesome enough. Now, with the addition of the great phoenix dragon, for Nan Yifan and the others, it was undoubtedly one disaster after another. Yes, Family E and Nan family's status and foundation were higher than those first-rate families. But compared to these two divine beast clans, they were still inferior. Not to mention that these two clans were even more powerful when they joined forces. How could they continue to fight? "Family head, do you think we should continue?" Someone from Family E whispered. The current situation was a little troublesome. Fortunately, they had not made a move yet. If they left now, they might be able to avoid this battle. Iwentao turned around and glanced at the person who spoke. His eyebrows moved slightly, and he said lightly, "You want to leave?" The person who spoke suddenly shuddered. "No, no." Although the family head's expression did not change, there was an inexplicable coldness that made one's heart turn cold. The people around wanted to say a few words of agreement, but when they heard Yi Wentao's question, they suddenly stopped talking. After spending so much effort to come here, if we leave quietly, how can Family Yi establish a foothold in the Divine Ruins world in the future? Yi Wentao's voice did not fluctuate, but it immediately alerted everyone. Yes, since he had already come this far, how could he leave just because he said so? Everything that had happened here today would quickly spread throughout the Divine Ruins, as if it had grown wings. At that time, how would those people think of Family Yi? Furthermore, they had come here for the Peach Blossom Dock. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to find such a perfect place again. No matter from what perspective, they could only choose to continue. Chi! A sound of air breaking suddenly came from behind. Nan Yifan suddenly came back to his senses, but before he could do anything, a cold green light suddenly flashed in front of his eyes. He knew something was wrong, but there was no time to dodge. An ice-cold stab of pain instantly came from his lower abdomen. His body to stop his eyes. A bloody hole the size of a bowl appeared on his body, and blood was gushing out. His clothes were already stained with blood, but at this moment, a large amount of blood was gushing out, quickly soaking his clothes and sticking them tightly to his body. Furthermore, blood was constantly dripping down, making him look even more ghastly. Intense pain quickly spread through his body. At the same time, the rich force seemed to have lost control as it surged out of his body. Nan Yifan's mind went blank for a moment. His core of essence had shattered. He was almost forcing himself to look back. Sin Yi had appeared behind him without him noticing. A transparent jade bangle was floating quietly in front of him. It was the same one he had used to block Nan Yifan's short blade. However, the jade bangle was now stained with a few drops of blood, which were slowly dripping down along the arc on it. It was obvious that the wound on Nan Yifan's body was caused by this thing. Nan Yifan's eyes widened in disbelief and deep resentment. How could this be? When Sin Yi attacked, why didn't he sense it at all? If he had reacted earlier, his core of essence wouldn't have been shattered so accurately. Sin Yi looked at him with a cold and indifferent expression, as though he was looking at an ant. He clearly didn't say anything, but Nan Yifan could feel that Sin Yi looked down on him. Nan Yifan became more and more furious, but at the same time, he also felt great fear. He had to admit that Sin Yi's strength was indeed above his. From start to finish, the two of them had only exchanged 2 moves. Sin Yi had directly placed him in such a situation, although part of the reason for this was because Nan Yifan himself wasn't alert enough. If Sin Yi wasn't strong enough, he definitely wouldn't have succeeded. What was more terrifying was that such a powerful figure was actually Chu Liyue's subordinate. He was willing to follow Chu Liyue and bow down to her. Why was that? Nan Yifan couldn't understand, but he was unwilling. Finally, his body couldn't support itself and fell down. Thud. His knees heavily knelt on the ground with a dull thud. This kneeling also directly smashed into the hearts of the Nan family members. For a moment, there was dead silence. Just then, a face suddenly appeared in Nan Yifan's peripheral vision. Yi Wentao. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Yi Wentao narrowed his eyes slightly. Nan Yifan suddenly thought of something, and a ruthless look flashed across his eyes. Boom! A ball of flame suddenly exploded from his body. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1950. The flame was pure white, and as it burned, there were specks of silver light flickering within it. The flame burrowed out of Nan Yifan's body and quickly engulfed his entire body. In the blink of an eye, he became a flaming man. However, unlike other flames, this silver-white flame was not boiling hot. Instead, it carried traces of cold air. On the ground where Nan Yifan was, the sporadic drips of blood gradually froze and were covered with a thin layer of frost. Then, Nan Yifan stood up again. Through the silver-white flame, Chu Luiyue could vaguely see that Nan Yifan's body was undergoing some kind of change. He just stood there, allowing the flame to burn wildly on his body. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth continuously surged toward him and merged with the flame. As time passed, Nan Yifan's aura, which had been much more dispirited, began to gradually recover. Chu Luiyue frowned. Rongxiu said, "He's summoning his divine body." Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, then suddenly understood. His divine body seems to be a little different from others. The Nan family had always been a rather mysterious existence in the Divine Ruins world, so there were not many rumors about Nan Yifan himself. Outsiders basically had no way of understanding him. As for what kind of divine body he had cultivated, it was naturally even more unknown. Chu Luiyue had seen many types of divine bodies in the ancient books of Lingxiao College, but none of them were the same as Nan Yifan's divine body in front of him. In just a short while, Nan Yifan's aura and pressure seemed to be comparable to when he had first appeared. More importantly, his aura was still rising. After the silver-white flame burned fiercely, it began to gradually return to Nan Yifan's body. Only then did Chu Luiyue see that most of the wounds on his body had healed. Even the wound on his abdomen, that Xin Yi had left behind, had mostly healed, and was beginning to scab. Chu Luiyue frowned. Nan Yifan's injuries were very serious, especially since his core of essence had been shattered. Logically speaking, he should have lost all his attacking power, and could no longer fight. Who knew? At this moment, Nan Yifan raised his head and looked straight at Chu Luiyue. Only then did Chu Luiyue see that his face and neck were covered with a thin layer of frost. Looking from afar, he looked like he had turned into an iceman. A thin layer of frost penetrated through, revealing a bone-piercing chill. As for his eyes, they had turned silvery white. When she met that pair of eyes, Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly shrank. Cold, bloodthirsty, crazy. It was as if it wanted to devour everything. A trace of uneasiness suddenly welled up in her heart, and she immediately circulated the origin power around her body. Xin Yi waved his sleeve, and the transparent jade bracelet rushed towards Nan Yifan once more. However, this time, Nan Yifan reacted immediately. He raised his hand and punched out. Clang! The incomparably hard fist fiercely collided with the transparent jade bracelet, emitting a clear and crisp sound. The transparent jade bracelet instantly flew out, and the ground beneath Nan Yifan's feet instantly cracked, causing his feet to sink in a little. However, his fist was unscathed. His body did not seem to have suffered any substantial damage either. One must know that his core of origin was already shattered, and he could not circulate his origin power at all. At this moment, he was purely relying on his divine body to support himself. Chu Luiyue frowned. Nan Yifan's divine body was actually this powerful? The transparent jade bracelet flew back, and Xin Yi raised his hand to catch it. Sensing the vibrations of the remaining power on it, his expression turned cold. Nan Yifan had already gone mad. He had directly given up on his physical body and used all his power to fill his divine body. In order to strengthen his divine body, he had even burned his remaining origin power. Doing so was no different from killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. Most importantly, this would cause him great and irreversible damage. He was going all out. Just as this thought flashed through Xin Yi's mind, he saw the last flame on Nan Yifan's body disappear. Then, with a tap of his foot, he went straight for Chu Luiyue. Nan Yifan was extremely fast. Chu Luiyue did not even have time to see his movements clearly before she felt a gust of cold wind. She focused her gaze and looked into Nan Yifan's silver-white eyes. A thought suddenly appeared in her mind. Nan Yifan seems to be targeting me? From the beginning until now, she had almost always been on the same side as Rongxiu and acted together. However, Nan Yifan had always targeted her alone, especially when he attacked. Without exception, all of them were directed at her. Why was this? It could not be because of his so-called fear of Rongxiu. After all, from the moment he decided to send Nan Yuxing and the others, he had already predicted today's outcome. That meant he felt that she was weaker than Rongxiu and easier to deal with. That did not seem right either. Rongxiu was right beside her and could attack at any time. Moreover, when they barged into Peach Blossom Cove's barrier earlier, They should have already seen some of her strength. Chu Liyue's eyes flashed. Nan Yifan was trying to force her to attack? Thinking of this, Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Yi Wentao. Almost at the same time, Yi Wentao also looked at her. The two of them confronted each other silently. Chu Liyue instantly confirmed the guess in her heart. There must be some kind of agreement between the two of them. That was why Nan Yifan was so reckless and wanted to face her head-on no matter what, forcing her to attack. What does Yi Wentao want to see? What does he want to know? Chu Liyue's mind raced. At this moment, Nan Yifan was almost in front of her. That biting cold aura was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. However, at this moment, rays of light suddenly flashed under Nan Yifan's feet. The rays of light were light green, and about the thickness of an adult's finger. They intertwined with each other, and directly formed a huge net that floated up. Nan Yifan took a step, and wanted to avoid it. However, the huge net had already begun to close. At the same time, countless silver needles flew out from it, and went straight for Nan Yifan. They covered the sky and covered the earth. Nan Yifan's figure was instantly enveloped. Nan Yifan originally did not care about these attacks, because he was very confident in his divine body. Moreover, this time, he had used all his strength to raise the strength of his divine body to the maximum. But soon, he realized that he had been too optimistic. These silver needles, and this huge net, are not to be underestimated. Soon, his vision was occupied, and his whole person was trapped on the spot, unable to continue forward. At this moment, Cini stepped forward. He slowly raised his hand, and then clenched it. Intense pain instantly spread throughout Nan Yifan's body. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1951. This scream was extremely mournful as it spread far and wide, instantly causing the expressions of everyone outside the barrier to change. Because they could clearly see that the green net had suddenly tightened and tightly bound Nan Yifan. At the same time, the countless silver needles on it pierced into his divine body. Although those silver needles were very thin, they were very long and extremely tough. If they pierced directly, even the bones would be pierced. Not to mention being pierced by thousands of silver needles, all over his body at the same time? This kind of pain was simply not something an ordinary person could endure. Nan Yifan's divine body trembled violently, but the giant green net tightly bound him, making him unable to move. Everyone could only see that the silver needles that flickered with a cold luster had almost all pierced into his divine body, leaving only the similarly sharp tips trembling slightly. This time, there was no more dark red blood gushing out of Nan Yifan's body, and it stained everywhere. However, everyone still felt a chill in their hearts as they watched. This kind of pain was no different from torture. This Cini, what a ruthless method! Yi Wentao couldn't help but exclaim in shock. They could all see that there was something fishy about those silver needles. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to pierce through Nan Yifan's divine body so easily. One must know that his divine body was already considered extremely strong, but at this time he was still unable to withstand Cini's attack. You must first have the strength to do this. Yi Wentao narrowed his eyes and said. In the beginning, his attention was on Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue. It was only later when Chu Liyue called out to Cini that he realized that this young man in green robes might not be simple. At this time, he could finally confirm his previous guess. This Cini, not only was he a Supreme God expert, but he was also one of the best among Supreme God experts. Although Yi Wentao and Nan Yifan didn't have much contact, they still had some contact. Therefore, he had a basic understanding of Nan Yifan's strength. Not to mention the Nan family, even in the entire Divine Ruins world, there were not many who could defeat Nan Yifan. However, not only did Cini gain the upper hand in the process of exchanging blows with him, it also looked like it was effortless. Even now, Yi Wentao was unable to accurately guess Cini's true strength. In short, he was stronger than Nan Yifan, and not just by a little bit. How come he had never heard of such a person before? Yi Wentao realized that he had come here in a hurry. If I had known earlier, I would have investigated more, however. It was clearly too late to say these things now. If I remember correctly, that Sin Yi seems to be one of Shang Guanyu's former subordinates? As for the others, how many of them are currently staying at the Peach Blossom Dock? Yuantao suddenly asked. Yuanzuo was stunned. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Jun Jiuqing reply. Yes. Only then did he realize that the question was directed at Jun Jiuqing. That's true. Sin Yi and the others came from outside the Divine Ruins world. Jun Jiuqing had stayed in the northern underworld for so long, so he should know more about them. Jun Jiuqing continued. She has a personal guard under her, called the 13U Guard. These 13 people were personally selected by her, and they only listen to her orders. Sin Yi is ranked first in the 13U Guard. Yuantao's brows furrowed slightly. Are the other members of the so-called 13U Guard as powerful as Sin Yi? There seemed to be waves in Jun Jiuqing's eyes. He smiled. How could that be? Digression. It was snowing heavily, and my hands were frozen stiff. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1953. There are 13 people in the 13U Guard. Sin Yi is ranked first, because he is the strongest. Although the rest are also rather outstanding, they are still slightly inferior to Sin Yi. Jun Jiuqing said slowly. Yuantao thought to himself, and felt that this was quite reasonable. However, since these people have been following Chu Luyue, since they were outside the Divine Ruins world, Sin Yi must be rather capable to have reached his current cultivation level. Either he had been a god in the past, or he had broken through after following Chu Luyue to the Divine Ruins world. But no matter how one thought about it, these two guesses were somewhat unbelievable. How old was Sin Yi now? His strength was so valiant. How could it be achieved so quickly in a short period of time? By the way, Patriarch, I remember that there was a rumor that the third boss of Peach Blossom Dock City was also Shang Guanyu's subordinate. Behind them, one of the elders who overheard their conversation suddenly thought of something and added on. That third boss came to Peach Blossom Cove a few years ago. He's doing business here, and is doing very well. It was said that he had close dealings with the Black Sword sect here. But now, there was no need to think to know that the Black Sword sect had been destroyed. Not a single one of them had escaped. The people in the Divine Ruins world did not receive any news about this. The Black Sword sect seemed to have disappeared just like that, without a sound. If they had not been paying attention to the happenings in Peach Blossom Dock, and knew that the Black Sword sect had always been here, they would have thought that Chu Luyue had come here and taken over the place. That's right, that third boss is no ordinary person. The small space in Peach Blossom Dock's Qingshui Cliff that contains many treasures belongs to him. The elder said. Otherwise, the Black Sword sect would not have kept him here for so long. Yuantao suddenly understood. So it's him. He remembered this person. It was just that when he had first heard the news, he had not paid much attention to it, as he had placed more of his attention on the Black Sword sect. Later on, when he found out about the close relationship between the Black Sword sect and the Black Demon Cave, he gave up on the idea of making a move. Who would have thought that the next time he heard news about Peach Blossom Cove, Chu Luyue had already become the master of this place. As for the Ink Sword sect, they had been completely wiped out. Yuantao looked ahead with a complicated expression. Could it be that Chu Luyue was able to take down the Peach Blossom Dock so smoothly because of third boss and the others? If that was the case, then her subordinates really couldn't be underestimated. He paused and turned his head halfway. Do you know the origins of the 13U guards in Shang Guanyu? Jun Jiuqing lowered his eyes and shook his head. These people have been following her since a long time ago, and she was the one who found them. As for their specific origins and background, other than her, there shouldn't be anyone else who knows. Yuantao was a little disappointed, but he was not surprised by the answer. He couldn't help but glance at Rong Xiao. From the beginning to the end, Rong Xiao had been by Chu Liyue's side, but he had almost never made a move. His intention was clear. Peach Blossom Dock was Chu Liyue's territory. Everything here should be settled by Chu Liyue and her subordinates. To put it bluntly, he had purposely given Chu Luiyue a chance to establish her authority today. It seemed that he was determined to make Peach Blossom Dock belong to Chu Luiyue. Head of family Yi. A nervous and hurried voice suddenly sounded. Yi Wentao turned around. The person who spoke was an elder of the Nan family, Nan Hetian. This person was also Nan Yifun's confidant. At this moment, he looked very worried and anxious. He cupped his fists at Yi Wentao. Head of family Yi, for the sake of the long-standing relationship between our families, please lend a hand and save my family head. At this time, it was definitely impossible to rely on the Nan family's strength alone. Only with the help of family, would there be a glimmer of hope. Nan Hetian didn't want to ask so directly, but he was forced to do so. He really had no choice. He had followed Nan Yifan for several years, and had always been loyal. Now that he saw Nan Yifan being tortured like this, how could he not feel sad? Moreover, he knew that Nan Yifan had secretly gone to family Yi. He knew very well that the two must have made some agreement. But for some reason, family Yi still hadn't made a move at this point. They even looked like they didn't care, and were just watching from the sidelines. Nan Hetian was burning with anxiety. He had no choice but to ask for help directly. The people of the Nan family also looked over. Yi Wentao's gaze swept across these people's faces, and he sneered in his heart. In fact, among these people, there might be some who couldn't open the barrier. If the 8 venerables joined forces, there would be some hope. But they didn't do so. It seemed that the people inside the barrier weren't the only ones who wanted Nan Yifan dead. All these years, the internal conflicts of the Nan family had always existed. But they were suppressed by Nan Yifan and didn't show much. However, when it came to the critical moment, it was fatal. Seeing that Yi Wentao didn't say anything, Nan Hetian gritted his teeth and continued. If family Yi is willing to help, the Nan family will do our best to help family Yi take down Peach Blossom Dock. As soon as this was said, the expressions of the people of the Nan family changed. Everyone could see that Nan Yifan was on the verge of death. Such a person was destined to be unable to continue to be the head of the family. Even if they managed to save him, what was the point? There were people who didn't like Nan Yifan, and Luo Yan's words earlier had shaken many people's hearts. Nan Hetian was Nan Yifan's closest confidant. He was naturally willing to do everything to save Nan Yifan, but others didn't think so. So after he said this, the people of the Nan family remained silent and didn't say anything. However, all of Nan Hetian's attention was on Yi Wentao at this time, so he didn't notice. Yi Wentao pondered for a moment, then glanced inside the barrier again. Nan Yifan knelt on the ground. His body was tightly bound and twisted. Blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth, but he couldn't say a word. From the looks of it, he was in an extremely sorry state. Who would have thought that Nan Yifan, the head of the Nan family, would be reduced to such a state one day? Yi Wentao frowned. Unfortunately, he had overestimated Nan Yifan. He had wasted so much time. It seemed that he had to do it himself. All right. In that case, I'll have to trouble everyone to do it together. Yi Wentao raised his hand. A gigantic bronze battle axe appeared in his hand. Some mysterious runes were engraved on the battle axe. When Yi Wentao mobilized the force in his body, a buzzing sound suddenly came from it. The next moment, he waved his arm and chopped down with the battle axe in his hand. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1954. Great Azure Sun Axe. Following Yi Wentao's shout, the sky quickly darkened. The wind howled. A huge black spatial crack appeared. The ground also began to crack, and a ravine spread. Immediately after, the sharp power of the axe rapidly transformed into a dazzling azure light ball, like the sun. It approached the barrier of Peach Blossom Cove. The transparent barrier that was suffused with a faint dazzling light began to shake violently. Ripples spread out in all directions. Sini quickly looked back, and was about to move when he was stopped by Chu Luiyue. Sini, watch Nan Yifan first. He immediately retracted his leg that was about to step out and nodded in response. Yes. Then, he walked in front of Nan Yifan and waved his sleeve. Nan Yifan's body suddenly flew backward. Xin Yi's figure moved and followed after him. Bang! Nan Yifan finally fell in front of Peach Blossom Cove's city gate. He was already at the end of his rope. Xin Yi's move caused his body to tremble, and he completely fainted. Actually, to be precise, he fell inside the city gate. When the people in charge of guarding the city gate saw this, not only were they not shocked, their faces were filled with admiration and praise. They had clearly seen how strong Nan Yifan was just now. However, in the end, he was still defeated by Xin Yi. From beginning to end, Xin Yi's body was not stained with a single trace of blood. 13 stood at the side, very close to Nan Yifan. He carefully sized up Nan Yifan, mainly looking at his injuries. As he looked, he recalled Xin Yi's moves. Soon, Xin Yi also walked over. Big brother. 13's face was filled with faint excitement. He had not seen his big brother personally fight for a long time. Now that he saw it, he was indeed powerful. The guards at the side also hurriedly bowed. Greetings to Lord Xin Yi. As people who had experienced the chaos of Peach Blossom Cove, they knew that Xin Yi was also very powerful. However, they did not know that he was so powerful. As expected of Lord Yu's man, the world admired the strong. Xin Yi's display of such powerful strength naturally made them even more convinced. Xin Yi nodded slightly and walked over, throwing a jade bottle to 13. Feed the pill inside to him. Master said to keep him alive. 13 hurriedly took the item. Yes. Although he didn't know why Master wanted to spare Nan Yifan's life, he had to follow Master's orders. 13 walked over and forcefully pried open Nan Yifan's mouth, feeding him the pill. His youthful face was calm and composed, and his movements were clean and swift. The surrounding people watched with trepidation. Isn't 13 only in his teens? Why did he seem so familiar with this kind of thing? Moreover, although Nan Yifan had fainted, he was still a venerable god powerhouse who had terrorized a region. Most people would still be somewhat afraid. However, there was not the slightest bit of fear on 13's face. Such courage was hard to come by. To be able to follow Master Yu, I reckon. They are not ordinary people. Xin Yi quickly retracted his gaze as a ripple flashed across his eyes. Master seems to. Are you finally going to make a move? The forces of both sides were fighting fiercely. At a certain moment, a crack finally appeared on the barrier. Chu Liyue muttered. The Great Azure Sun Axe is one of the 10 great sacred artifacts. It is indeed extraordinary. Rong Xiu's heart stirred as he glanced at her. As expected, he saw a familiar expression in her eyes. He could not help but curl his lips and ask in a low voice. Do you want it? Digression. I'm crippled. My hands are completely frozen. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.